Oh, yeah. I'm not a fan. I wasn't a fan of that. My friend is. Ralph. Whenever we get started. I don't want to. But I just. That's what I want to know.
We are about to be ready to go.
So Yelena, you were right. St. George Lighthouse is only about 12 miles from the port.
Yeah, someone mentioned
I think it's like 115 feet tall.
115 layer from the vehicle. Okay. Okay, well, that's good to know. Thank you, Leonard. I apologize to interrupt. We are just start. Okay. Can everyone? How does this work?
Did you know that?
Hi, everyone. Let's start taking our seats. Are we good here?
We are. I think we're good to go. We got about 10 people on right now.
Perfect. Okay. Okay, folks. Thank you everyone for joining today. I'm going to ask folks to stay quiet, and the reason we have a virtual access option with people zooming in, calling in, and they need to be able to hear what you will have to say here and vice versa. My name is Yelena Novak. I am the Executive Director of the Oregon Trout Commission. We are located here in Brookings, and our fishermen include those fishing and delivering Oregon pink shrimp, variety of the bottom trout brown fish, and Pacific whiting, delivering all to Oregon. We are the largest producer on the West Coast as the fleet, as the industry here in Oregon. Oregon Trout Commission is one of the 4 seafood state commodity commissions, and we are the oldest. We were established in 1963 to support our industry. Thanks again for joining to learn and discuss, ask questions, and share your opinion and voice about the very important issue that is currently happening as we speak the offshore wind energy development that's being proposed of the southern Oregon coast, as well as of the northern coast of California, central California coast, and up in Washington. And this is just the beginning, from what I understand. These gatherings today, the reason it's called listening session, community listening session, this is an opportunity for the community to speak up and share their opinion and voice concerns or otherwise with our state legislature. And we have today with us State Representative David Brocksmith. Thank you, David, for being here. He is the chair of today's discussion and will be moderating. Before I jump to a little bit of background for you, David, I will start by saying, and I hope everyone was able to grab the pamphlets from the foyer. The Bureau of Ocean Energy Management, also known as BOEM, is the regulator, federal regulator that has proposed on, actually I should correct myself, has announced 2 coal areas of the southern Oregon coast, total roughly 1,800 square miles for potential future development. The wind energy areas will become developed and finalized towards the fall of this year. That's the next step. And one of the pamphlets show you the process, the BOEM process, how it works. And we are at the very beginning of the process. Just a few words about what the issue is. I've been involved in this subject since 2019. When I remember it was the last in-person meeting of the Oregon BOEM Task Force, which is proper BOEM Oregon Intergovernmental Renewable Energy Task Force, consisted of state, county, federal agencies, tribes. There is no other stakeholders in that group. That was the official start in my mind of hands-on being involved. The process is very obscure and unclear, frustrating, hardly any public process available with how BOEM approaches this. It's very unusual how they do business when you compare it with how our fisheries are managed and how it's collaboration based. Every stakeholder who wants to voice themselves, they have a venue to be heard. This is not how BOEM approaches it. It's a backwards approach when first they announce the coal areas, which pretty much becomes they claim the land. And they will shrink it at the next step to some extent, and then it will go out for leasing of private entities. There's only a couple places where we have an opportunity to provide an official public comment, including the one that is happening right now. And you have that information in the pamphlets. Please consider looking into it and submitting your public comment in the Federal Register. The deadline is June 28th. This is very important. We have to be on record. And I will briefly list a couple of things for you guys to keep in mind. So for the fishing side, the list of concerns is growing. There is a tremendous amount of the environmental issues and concerns with science available. Fishing grounds will be tremendously impacted. My sector undoubtedly will be impacted. Those coal areas that you see on the map overlap our fishing grounds in the south. And whether it's the habitat disturbance or destruction, the biofouling, the bottom scouring, the electromagnetic field impacts to salmon, whales, many other species. The secondary entanglement. On the community side, there is also many potential impacts. Environmental impacts, the view shed, the change in our affordability of the housing, and many others. And the jobs and economics that are being promised based on range. So I encourage everyone who has a seed of doubt to look into that a little closer and start paying a little more attention. It's not as green as being promised. It takes a lot of the rare earth minerals to build those turbines. By the way, they are 2 Statue of Liberty in the height. Yes. And the technology that will be used here on the West Coast is prototype based. It has not been developed anywhere yet. Floating technology in deep waters. Floating technology exists, not in the deep waters. And the landfill. The blades are non-recyclable steel. So keep that in mind. It will be coming down to landfills in the area they are constructed. Okay, so today, this is your opportunity, our opportunity to speak up. Man, it's warm here. I'm like, oh, thank you. Speak up, share what you think. The meeting is recorded. We may be able to use this and submit the comments, what we already gathered. There were 3 meetings before this. One in Coos Bay, thank you, David. The listening session was very successful on May 4th. Another one in Newport, Astoria. And the last one will be tomorrow in Charleston.
No, there's one on Monday at Newport.
Yes, exactly. Thank you. All right. We have time until 7, so I don't know if we need to measure people. Let's just maybe not be doing that. Those probably online know what I mean. Yes, any questions? I'm Elena again. Any questions, please feel free to let me know. Bathrooms are right there outside of the room. There's coffee, help yourself, cookies. To keep people happy in the evening hours. Again, thank you so much. David, microphone to you. Representative David Brocksmith introduced the bill that successfully, I guess, passed. HB House Bill 3375 last year, with the goal of studying the challenges and opportunities of 3 gigawatts of offshore wind energy in Oregon by 2030. David, I'm handing over the microphone to you to explain yourself.
Thank you, Elena, and thanks for the folks here at Community College for allowing us all to be here. And it's good to see some faces that I know. And it's a privilege and honor to represent you. So I've been to all of these listening sessions up and down the coast. And so this is my 4th. I was in Astoria on Monday, Newport last Wednesday, but I haven't been able to talk to what I call my, right? And so it's a pleasure to be here. So in the 21 legislative session 3375, we needed to be proactive in knowing that the BOEM process was coming forward. They had already started their task force to look at offshore wind off of Oregon, and Oregon didn't have a way to engage other than the DLCD and OEF&W agencies. And so knowing that the entire coastal section of the Oregon coast could only handle just shy of 3 gigawatts. I picked 3 gigawatts because I knew that's all that they would be able to do, and BOEM couldn't do any more because there's no transmission moving forward in any scope whatsoever at the state level either. with expanded transmission. It was necessary in my mind to have the planning bill at the state, which is one of the reasons why it passed unanimously over the House, because we knew, I know when it comes to the federal agencies, the extra layer is necessary for us to have stakeholder. Unfortunately, as we move the bill forward, I couldn't put any money attached, and I say because I have an R next to my name, but that's really the case. And so the Oregon Department of Energy was able to basically tell the legislature that we will be able to do this and use our existing resources within our budgets. I then tried to get roughly $150,000 out of the last legislative session to have something like Oregon Solutions be kind of an independent facilitator of conversations up and down the coast, so that we can engage with our fishermen stakeholders and processor stakeholders. Unfortunately, I was unsuccessful in getting those resources. And so about a month and a half ago, I was talking with Elena and Heather Mann of the Midcoast Trawlers and Lori Steele of the processors, and Josh Bettenworth of England Marine and others, and the Cocoa Tribe, and Commissioner Cribbins from Coos County. We decided we just push forward with listening sessions, and I'll just use my office and no resources. But in partnership with the industry, they have been fantastic in helping facilitate these discussions so that your voice can be heard and so that I can hear your voice. So that more importantly, the bicameral, partisan coastal caucus, which is a caucus made of legislators from the Oregon coast, from here in Brookings to Astoria, and they represent the districts on the coast, can hear your voice, so that we can then engage. Of course, all of you need to be engaged, and you have the information in the handouts that you have in the Oregon Department of Energy listening, and they want to hear from you as well. And their deadline is this Friday. I'm sorry for the short notice, but when we put these together, we picked dates and try to get it facilitated and get it done as soon as we could. And then, of course, you heard Elena talk about the BOEM process, and their comment period ends June 28th. Yeah. And so many, I know, think, well, Brock Smith wrote the bill, he wants offshore wind to come in here, and that couldn't be further from the truth. If it wasn't for the bill, then you would be engaging in BOEM alone, and the state would be not engaged in this process as we move forward. It's because of the legislation, again, that help facilitate in the district discussions so that your voices can be heard to the state legislature through the Oregon Department of Energy process, as Elena said, looking at the challenges and the pros and cons of what's happening. So I'm here to listen to you. Again, this is the second to the last listening session. I'll be in Charleston tomorrow night. You can listen to that on KWRO because for the first time, we're going to have a radio station there broadcasting that listening session. We have a number of folks on the live streaming right now. And more importantly, we have representatives from our federal delegation online. Dana Black from Senator Merkley's office should be online, as well as Fritz Thomas from Senator Wyden's office is online. And I believe we also have a representative from Congressman Schrader and Congressman DeFazio's office. And so when it comes to the BOEM process that I have problems with, right? I mean, how many crabbers do we have in the audience, right? We just fought with you through the NOAA process, dealing with whale entanglement issues as your coastal caucus. But yet when it comes to this process through the BOEM process, citing, they really don't have much engagement with NOAA and the whale entanglement issues moving forward. The EIS is actually backwards. It's after the lease areas are designated. And so, but again, I'm not here. I'm here to listen to all of you. If you're loud enough in the back, please, you can please speak. They just need to hear you up here, right? It's really important that our congressional representatives hear what you have to say. I will, so if you'd like, and we appreciate those to come up to the mic to address your concerns. And we don't have one that I can bring to you. And so we'd appreciate it if you come up and do so. So again, yes, question?
What was the deadline that you mentioned was this Friday? What deadline is that?
That is the Oregon Department of Energy's comment period.
For the House Bill 3375. So we only have 2 days.
So actually, that comment period, ma'am, has been open for about 3 months,
2 more days.
but 2 more days is the comment period. I mean, so they're shooting for the 27th, but if you trickle them in over the weekend and so forth, then that will be fine. But they've been having, they actually were only proposed to have 2 meetings. We pushed for a 3rd in-person meeting in Coos Bay 2 weeks ago. Was it 2 weeks ago? Yes, 2 weeks ago. We had quite a turnout there to hear concerns, and there was a presentation from Odo where they are in the process. So, again, thank you all for being here. I look forward to hearing your thoughts and comments, as well as again, it's important we get the congressional delegation online, and so it's important for them to hear you as well.
And we will rotate, 1 second, we will rotate between this room in person. Just raise your hand to make a comment or a question. And then we will be trying to rotate it with this group so they get to speak as well. And we have this microphone. So in the back, you should be able to hear them as well, and vice versa.
I just want to add, I know that there's folks that are extremely frustrated in here. There's folks that, you know, don't shoot the messenger, right? I'm a state representative. I'm not a congressman. I don't have the ability to have, if I had the wand, there's a lot of things that would be different. Trust me, right? Pardon me, ma'am?
Oh, I was just thinking this is all that's really been in the paper. That I've seen.
And so, you know, I want to listen to you, and that's why we've set up those, and I'm, you know, been dedicated to be at every one up and down the coast, so that I can ultimately draft a letter for the Coastal Caucus over this weekend to be submitted on your behalf. So your input is important to all of the legislators on the coast. So thank you.
Thank you,
I just wanted
David.
to clarify what David was talking about and answer this question. You mentioned the comment period is only for 2 days for the Department of Energy. However, for the State Department, however, at the federal level, the comment period is longer than
June
that.
28th.
June 28th.
And all the information for you to comment is within the handouts that you have.
Okay. Do we have a, sir?
Couple of questions, and I apologize because I got here at 4:07 and already covered it. So the site map that's included, I've seen that also other places.
Mhm.
So those are proposed sites and not designated sites, correct? Or have they been the designated sites?
So those are the call areas, meaning there's a call for information and nomination posted in the Federal Register on April 28th.
No, I
And
understand.
within these areas, BOEM basically soliciting feedback from wind developing side, which parts of those areas developers want to develop.
Okay, so
I don't know if I answered it.
what do they say? I'll come back to it. So I'm sure you already told everybody in the 4 phases of the BOEM. Are we still in phase 1? I'm assuming?
Basically. So planning and analysis, yes.
Okay, so right now, for the Federal Register, there's a public comment period that ends June 28th, right?
Yes.
But I imagine as you get through the other steps here, the 4 steps, you're gonna will there be another public comment period?
Mhm.
Or,
Yes.
there will be, correct?
There will be. So there will be a couple more specifically when they begin the NEPA, the National Environmental
That's what I
Policy.
was thinking.
And they will be doing scoping. So there will be a couple of the public comment opportunities there, which will be absolutely critical to provide your comments in the scoping and then throughout.
Well, the reason I asked the first one was that, I haven't dealt with other stuff, offshore oil and all that. And even marine reserves. So in the beginning of the process, they have proposed sites, but farther down, I don't know what step it would be. They clarify or they change, and they become designated. Once they're designated sites, they're in stone. And I'm just curious, these are just the proposed sites, right?
So the next one, the wind energy area, once the coal areas become wind energy areas, which I understand will be September.
Lease areas will be announced from Bowen at this fall. And so once those lease areas, then
That's when they're designated.
then they'll be basically designated, that's roughly about 1,800 square miles
Okay.
of coal areas. They'll be reduced to the leased areas because we don't need 1,800 square miles of wind turbines to create 3 gigawatts of energy.
Okay.
But then it's up for basically a lease auction where those lease areas will be sold to a wind energy industry. And that money goes in Bowen's coffers, if I'm correct. And when they just had a lease sale on the East Coast that went for billions of dollars.
The Gulf of Maine.
I think Maine pushed back.
There has been several, the big ones, including something like near $4 billion. Highest bidder, it goes to high.
I thought, could John tell us?
Okay,
Scott Russell, he's the guy,
we can hear you.
Oh,
Just saying.
I was gonna say it's 6 sites in the New York Bight that went for $4.5 billion.
Thank you, Heather. There you go. And just to clarify, we finally were able to get the answer from Bowen during the 2 weeks ago Oregon Department of Energy meeting. They confirmed that coal areas for 18 gigawatts right now worth, they can come back to those later if they want to. So the fact that there are coal areas out, it's kind of in a way a claim, I suppose. For now, it sounds like they will be aiming to narrow it down to something possibly 3 gigawatts, possibly more, but they can reinitiate the process at any point later for more. Okay, yes, sir.
Yes, I have a question as to where the power goes. Yes. Does it go to Oregon only? Because why would we want this eyesore and environmental impact and fishing damage to our industry, our fishing industries and everything else out there in the ocean? When the leasers come in and buy it up, they pretty much have free run of that, their lot that they've leased. So they can do what they want with it as long as they stay within the environmental impact zone, things that way. But what we're not seeing is the paperwork that you guys have given us, and for us to have full information. Why don't we have anything from past environmental impact studies that they've done where they put the wind in other places on the ocean? We'd like to know all those things before we can have all the questions that we really want to ask, because for one thing, I'm not in favor of any type of a dead zone that is going to mess with our fishing industry here, period. We only have a few resources on this coast to keep our communities going. And the last thing we need is some huge wind farm that might, let's say they blow a seal and how many gallons of toxic waste is in them? What happens to that? You guys, do they just say, oh, we're sorry, your coastal fishing is gone? Sorry. See, that's the whole problem, that what we're not seeing. You guys want to give us information and let us to ask you questions, but we don't have all the information. And you can't tell me that you don't have environmental impact zones from other places where they're in the ocean. We need to see those things. That is the key for everything here.
So you're acting like we're proposing these?
Oh, no,
Let me finish.
But if you guys.
I don't have the EISs, if I may, I don't have the EISs from the East Coast.
Why? Why?
Exactly.
Exactly. You know, and that's the whole thing.
I would like to have.
I
It
can
seems
take
like
the-
we're all
I can
a little
take-
less informed than we need to be.
All right.
Yeah.
You're bringing up some fabulous points.
Well, that's what's gonna, those are the points that it's gonna come down to in this community. Plus, what is it gonna really do for our community?
You're making a statement right now, public comment. And
Absolutely, that's what we're here
you
for.
pinpointed many of the concerns and issues. And there is no, from the EIS, by the way, is environmental impact statement. Just 1 second, sir. I'll get right to you afterwards. They will do that after the highest bidder purchase the ocean real
After it's already set in
estate.
stone.
And that just doesn't make any
That's
sense.
too late.
Absolutely, it's too late.
We agree with
BOEMS
that.
is not in business to protect our nature, environment, or ocean and fish independent jobs. They're in a business to lease out and develop the ocean space for energy development.
And they're generally, they're gonna be big out-of-state countries.
Yes,
Or out-of-state or out-of-country companies that really don't think about us. Are the people of our community gonna be employed to help maintain and fix the area and to fix the stuff? No. Is there gonna be any type of a job gain in our area for our community that we have to sit there and deal with it out there? Another question to be that we don't have information on.
well, and again, I can take a little bit a stab at that. If BOEM was here or the proponents, they would be advocating with some big job numbers that would be quite impressive or concerning. I don't know which one. We don't have, some numbers are just out of this world. Number one, for our local small communities. Number two, if you read between the lines in the 400+ page reports, all those numbers come from, you will see it's all based on the range. And there is a low range and high range, and it's based on the projections and studies of how much local supply chain content there is to pull the labor, for example, or to buy the components. Do we have any? That's the
Well,
question.
how about the boats go out and service it, to provide services in the whole 9 yards for it? See, that's what we're looking for in this area. The Green New Deal is a great thing, and I'm a carpenter myself, and I believe that we eventually have to get off of the carbon and the fossil fuels. That's understandable, but the technology's got to be there. Now, you guys are saying it's the Green New Deal, and it's a new wind farm, and it's all that, but like you just said, the blades aren't even recyclable.
Okay, you're right. You're making really good points. So one thing real quick, because we also have, we gotta be cognizant of people online. And we gotta make sure that we provide opportunity for hopefully everyone who would like to share. So people can see you. If you can please stand up when you speak, and if you would like to share your name, that would be fantastic. If not, no problem. Okay.
So if I can just try to answer a couple of those questions. For one, we're not proposing anything. I'm here to listen to you. I don't have the authority or the ability to build these things or to stop it, right? And so
Hopefully we do though.
that's why I'm here.
We
That's
get
why
to
we're
vote?
that's why we're facilitating these meetings, so that to give the community partners the ability, stakeholders the ability to make these comments. When it comes to construction, for example, there was an economic study done where these turbines could be possibly built at the Port of Coos Bay and floated to their location. When it comes to servicing, it would just make sense to have a service vessels in Brookings, moored in Brookings with people that are being paid to service the call area, or at least eventually lease area out of Brookings.
Probably an out-of-state.
I don't know, sir. I'm just trying to answer the question. So is there, so I'm trying to moderate. You've been moderated, but Is there some more comment? Yes, sir.
So my name is Richard Heath. I live here in Brookings. I'm a recreational fisherman. And I'm concerned, to say the least, about this. We're being asked to provide incremental comment on what? On what? I'll come up here.
Thank you.
We have seen nothing except the call area. So what are we going to comment on? We like this or we don't like it? That's easy. We don't like it. Okay, we don't know where they're going to go. We don't know what they look like. We don't know how many they're going to be. We don't know what depth they're on. How do we comment on that? Except to say, we don't like it.
That's the only
Okay, so,
information we have.
so things that I think have to happen. We need Bohm here.
Yeah.
Because Bohm thinks they know about these fisheries, but they aren't going to find out about the fishery unless they talk to us. They know nothing about recreational fishing, absolutely nothing. We don't have VMS, we don't have AIS on our boats, we don't use it. They have no idea where we're going. They can find out from us if they want to come and talk to us, and they need to be in this community. I'm tired, frankly, of stuff happening in Newport. The call area isn't in Newport, it's in Brookings. So we need to be able to talk to them directly. They need to address us directly. So what is it that we think we need? Okay, here's what I want. I want design standards before these things are even contemplated. We should tell them, you build them like this, not let them tell us we're going to make them the way we want to make them. This is public land out here, no different than any other piece of public land in the US. All the other public land is managed on a multiple use basis, compatible use. This appears to me not to be that case. This is a single use. You're going to build me a site, make it so I can fish it. Because trust me, we'll fish them. If they aggregate fish, we'll be in. And you can build them to allow us to fish. You can put them a mile apart. You can orient them with the current north and south.
Join the meeting.
We control that. The commercial guys control that. We can't trawl it. So the trawl fishing ends when those things show up. So what happens then? And we ought to be talking about mitigation from the people who build these things. That's common on public land. So what kind of mitigation would we see? Well, it may be improvements in port facilities and receiving docks to benefit the commercial fleet, maybe a bigger, better ice house. There's any number of things we could look at for mitigation. The other thing we need to be very
through this process, those are called lease provisions.
Okay, so let's make sure those are in there. That we're firm on that. This isn't something you do at your will, we do it at our will. This is our land, these are our resources. If you're going to impact them and make money on them, you should do them in a fashion that we dictate. That should be the goal. The other thing that we need to be very cognizant of is decommissioning and removal. And that needs to be firmly entrenched. Whatever paperwork we do. And I'll give you some examples. I grew up in Nevada. I worked in Nevada during the gold mining boom. I worked in the wildlife business. We have reclamation plans in place with major corporations. And I'll tell you how they handle that. When the mine life ended, they formed a subsidiary corporation. They sold the mine to them and they went bankrupt. And we got left over that. So there needs to be a lot of thought given to this. I mean, it's going to happen. So we should try and determine how it's going to happen. Can't tell them where, but we should be able to tell them how this should work. So what are my thoughts?
I'm hopeful that we can still tell them where. And for as far as the decommissioning and Elena or Heather,
Heather
I
would like
can,
to respond.
correct me if I'm wrong, especially when it comes to the trawl fisheries, and this is one of the concerns, is there's no technology to lift those anchors up off the floor, and so they would just leave them there, therefore eliminating the ability for those possibly eliminating the ability for those trawl fisheries to go back into those areas even after the turbines have been decommissioned.
Heather would like to respond. Heather Mann, Midwater Trawlers Cooperative. Heather, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Elena. I just was hoping to kind of explain a little bit more about why these comments are so important. And so, Richard, I completely agree with everything you're saying, and the gentleman that was in the back. we're used to the Magnuson Act and that process, which is very transparent, very stakeholder driven. You have input through every step of the process. You can't make a move without robust environmental studies done first. That's not how BOEM operates. They operate under different regulations that don't require transparency. There's no metrics that you have to abide by in terms of how much negative impact to whales, to the environment, to fisheries, how much is too much. And it's not done in a public process. So I agree that BOEM needs to hear from you. This listening session is to kind of help you get prepared to provide comments to BOEM, but also to provide comments to the state legislature. Now, HB 3375 is a study. It doesn't commit anything, doesn't commit the state to 3 gigawatts. It's a study of the opportunities and the challenges. I would challenge all of you to respond to the Department of Energy in Oregon and say, look, you need to slow this process down. We want a moratorium on offshore development. And here's the things that need to happen, whether it's a robust EIS up front, the different kinds of lease requirements that you're mentioning, Richard. I mean, all that stuff needs to be figured out up front. I asked BOEM the other night in Coos Bay if the state of Oregon were to ask for a pause, would they? And they said they would have to reassess. So I'm saying that we need our legislators to be courageous enough to step up and say, this is not the Oregon way. We want to slow this process down. The Port of Newport passed a resolution unanimously last night. It has 7 steps in it for things that should happen to protect recreational and commercial fishermen and communities. Would love to get that passed by all the ports. And you're right, Richard, that the areas are off of Coos Bay, but it will directly impact fishermen from Newport. It'll directly impact commercial fishermen from Astoria, who have utilized those grounds for years. And we're all in this together in Oregon, recreational, commercial. And so I totally agree. I just want to make sure that you understand that right now we're telling David Brock Smith and others on the Coastal Caucus, this is not the right way to go about doing this. We need you to step up and defend us and help these communities and these fisheries and the environment make it through this process. And they need to stand up and do that. And we need to, that's our job to encourage them to do that. So, but I am in agreement with you guys. I just didn't want you to think BOEM wasn't, BOEM will check a box that said they've been taking public comment. That's all they do. They don't even have to respond to public comments the way NIMS does, right? So it's a total black box and we all need to be making our comments. So those are just some thoughts that I have and hopefully help you understand that these two processes are ongoing, parallel to each other. And we need the state of Oregon, our legislators in Oregon, to say to the federal government, slow down and get this right.
Who was that?
That was Heather Mann, the director of the Midwater Trawlers Cooperative. And my counterpart, yes, sir.
Hi, folks. Thank you, Mr. Pete, for mentioning some things that are pretty important. I'm James Gillespie. I own Brookings Automotive here in town. I've done a few other things in my life. One of them was commercial saturation diver in the Gulf of Mexico. Working in the oil field, something that Mr. Heat mentioned is very, very important. And a lot of people here, you're not going to like it. It's happening. They don't like to say that, but you've obviously thought about it a lot. This is a big business and more money and more people and more power than any of us can even imagine go into these things. And I know that from the oil field. also a little nervous in public. Sorry, guys. Forgive me. When big energy companies, I've heard somebody ask, who's involved and who's already asking questions. There is a company that is already in mind. And in fact, you could probably direct questions to them. Total Energies is, have you heard of them yet?
EP's involved, I mean, all the big.
They are. Everybody, from what I've gathered and a few phone calls I made, people I used to work with, Total Energies has a company based here. Part of them is based here out of Houston, Texas, where pretty much all energy happens, based from. And then their main office is, they're a French company, just like this fellow mentioned back here. You're right. It is a frustration. They do, what we can do about it is, like Mr. Heath was mentioning, push to use local resources, push to make it clean, push to make it environmentally friendly, push to make it where, you know, the best fishing I ever did in my life was scuba diving around platforms when we were off duty. There will be, you're right, it'll be a privilege. I don't speak well in public, guys, but forgive me, just ride with me here because I have a lot of information. And the fishing will be great around the areas. Not to be a proponent for it, because I don't like to see that. I don't want to drive up here and park at the lookouts where I go and park and hang out with my girlfriend and take my kids hiking and look out there and see these things. It's frustrating, and a lot of coastal states go through it. And unfortunately, the pushback is pointless. Working with them is what we want to focus on, because they just have the ability to push it and push it and push it, and they'll file counter motions and they'll win because they have the money that we don't. Your bill to study it better is probably the best thing that's happened surrounding this, because that'll ensure us that they know people care, that we care, our community cares. I was born in Klamath Falls, moved here when I was 4, and I've lived here ever since, except for the 10 years I was down south. Lived in Louisiana and Texas. And when the oil field or the energy companies want something, they get it. Especially when it has huge bipartisan support. Both sides of the aisle want this. That makes it almost impossible, especially where we are, where we're all familiar with Portland, Eugene, Salem, making decisions for us. It's been that way as far as any of us can remember. They make the rules for us. It's frustrating, but it's how it is, and it's up to us to fight it or work with it. I just want to say that I think working with it is probably our only avenue that's gonna lead to restful nights of sleep. Without a better way to put it, that's really the answer to it. If you're able to think of things that make it safer, like the windmills collapsing or falling in the water, that's a possibility. And what got me thinking about this and interested in it was those possibilities, because that's a dive operation. The whole thing has dive operation. And I looked at it and I'm like, if it does provide jobs, I will probably jump on that because it's already happening. And when I see who's doing it or what's happening and how, I might work with one of these companies. Because it's already being pushed through. And I think you made a very good point earlier when you said it's coming. It just is. I know that's frustrating to you.
No, not at all.
Things that we don't want to hear.
Oh, that is, yes, I know what you were saying.
Right, but I mean, you know, we use our minds to come up with ways of don't just be hateful and spiteful, look into the things that make sense about it. I don't wanna-
Could you name one of those things?
What's that?
Could you name some of the things that make sense about it? It's not like an oil rig. Remember, there's no platform. It's floating.
There will be no diving.
There's electromagnetic stuff coming off that impacts species.
That is true. I have a friend, actually, I left my phone in the truck because I just didn't want it in here to distract me or you guys. He is a commercial diver, went to school with me actually in 2003. He's done a number of these installations, and the diving is extensive on it.
This doesn't exist. I guess we need to understand more, and I'd love to talk to him because floating offshore wind does not exist. So whatever he's done is not floating offshore wind. The only place it exists is off of Portugal, floating offshore, not stationary.
His installations were in the Philippines, and I think you are correct. They are stationary, they're anchored to the ground, and they're like an oil platform. So the floating, you're correct. The deep water, I'm not sure of the differences or the impacts of how floating would be different. There's still going to be a significant amount of diving involved in that for laying out the lines to carry the power to shore. All of it. I mean, this is a resource that is very, very much like oil. It's going to have its environmental effects. It always does. Some of you fishermen may be familiar with probably why it's exactly a little over 12 miles out, because then they don't really, there's a little more leeway after so many miles out. Right. Like you were interested in the diving part of it?
Well, I'm interested in what you said. Let's look at what the benefits are. And from all the research and what we're learning, I'm not seeing any benefits to floating offshore wind that outweigh the risks and the unknowns to the marine habitat, the environment, coastal communities, all of those things. So I was curious what you thought the benefits were.
The only benefit that I see is jobs and a different kind of an assortment of work is kind of the only benefit I see, because I don't understand quite how much power they're I read something that was gonna said that it would be able to, the power that would made would be 2 million homes or something. And I didn't look into that any further because that's not really my interest in it. I just want to, as soon as I saw it and I recognized how they were doing it, I knew it was coming, and I started thinking about ways to work with it. And to encourage us to push for the things, like if you think of something that makes it unsafe, push for those guidelines. And
Okay.
the lease provisions are very important.
I have a couple of, thank
Oh,
you,
go
and
ahead.
I have a couple of things to address, may I?
Well, of course, but I mean, this is meant to be a listening session to hear all of you, not a debate back and forth. No, I mean, more Heather was, so I just want to, listen to your comments and concerns and.
But really quick, because I think we stirred up a little bit of interest around the subject. Because of the floating technology, the way it will be moored with extensive mooring system, including the slacking links of metal, the giant links that will be to keep the turbine up and standing. It will be moving back and forth with the water, with the motion of the water, and it will be just dragging back and forth the sediment. From what I read, very little science out there, but there is, the water column will have so much sediment. There may be hardly any habitat, well, habitat will be destroyed. And when habitat is completely destroyed, because of the constantly moving object on the bottom, there will not be opportunities for enjoying the diving or underwater fishing or what have you. But I suggest that perhaps if you would like to leave your card, or I will give you my card. I think it's a great conversation, and I suggest that we continue it.
For sure. I want
After
to
the
mention
meeting.
though, that the floating technology is very, very old. Lots and lots of oil.
Let's
fields.
take each, I would like to allow the rest of the room an opportunity. We have just a little more time left, and Heather is my other moderator over there. So we will take a couple hands here. Let's do 4 hands, and then we will allow folks on the computer to speak, okay? I promise, the lady in the back, and then we will go with the sir, yes, sir, who was in line for a while waiting, and then we will move forward. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Georgia Allen, and I think one of the things that came out in just the previous person is that the technology we're talking about here has never been really done at the level. The offshore floating technology in deep waters is not been something that's been done before at the scale they're talking about. We're talking several megawatts, and that was something that came out when the Oregon South Coast fishermen had the Oregon Anglers group come down and speak very well on that. And my question is, because they spoke very well about the turbines, the size of the turbines, the type of massive underground, what's underneath that has to be there. The one thing that I have a question about is how does it look when it comes to land? Okay, we're talking about a special type of cables that has to be tied in to allow for the power conversion to connect to the grid. All right. My understanding from Stephen, you can correct me, Dave, if I'm wrong. He said there were 5 power stations, but they were not down by Brookings area. So do they have to build? How many substations are we talking about onshore for Brookings when it comes to land? How does that cable connect? And the type of cable they're talking about is very energized. Okay, and I'm speaking layperson. I don't know what the exact terminology is for that. So my question is, what does it look like? How many power stations are we talking about when it lands Brookings? And Brookings, this whole area is from the Rogue River Reef down to the border of Brookings. We're talking a huge area here. So they have to, and it's a short connection to that. What does that look like on our land, our shore? Thank you.
Thank you, Georgia. I appreciate the comments. I will try to answer to what I know. The cable, so the turbines are roughly 15 to 20 megawatts a piece, right? They're connected together. And then there's a floating substation where the power, all the power from that array goes to. And then the one cable then comes from that to shore. When it gets to shore, it is buried. And then it comes to shore buried to a substation that, as you described, that when connected to the grid. At that point, I do know that the local jurisdiction, such as the county or the city, depending on where it is, has input in that land use process, right? Of where that cable comes ashore, how it does, so on and so forth. So they do have the option to have that engagement there. And as a former county commissioner, you know all about that.
Okay, thank you. We have a person here, and then there's a couple people in the back, and we will take the Zoom people. Please, if possible, folks, let's try and remember to say the name.
Dan Fraser,
Thank
lived in Brookings now for over 50 years. I had the opportunity, excuse me, back in the 1st of March to listen to the BOEM podcast or webinar, what you like to call it. Like Mr. Smith said, there is 5 substations onshore. The closest one to us is going to be east of, according to their deal, will be east of Coos Bay. So everything from Brookings will go north and then on to shore just south of Coos Bay. So there will be nothing for Brookings residents other than seeing these turbines off our shore. Also, In that podcast or webinar, I'll call it a webinar, in the last 30 minutes of that webinar, there was a speaker that spoke of a study that has now come out of the south end of the north over there in by Denmark. In that study,
Join the meeting.
it talks about the downwind effect of the wind turbines. Now, in that, it talks about how it can impact the weather. The wake field behind those turbines over there is, I want to say 35 or maybe even as far as 70 kilometers downwind that is felt. What is that going to do to our weather? For those of that live here in Brookings, or more precisely in Harbor, the last 6 years now, we've experienced saltwater intrusion in our drinking water. Is it going to lessen our rain cycle with these wind turbines? So we have less water coming down the Chetco because we have less wind or rain. It also talks about in that study, environment, the ocean underneath those turbines getting warmer. Now we have crabbers in this fleet or in this audience, maybe online. What's that going to do to the domoic acid? How's it going to impact the crab fisheries or even the shrimp fisheries? What's it going to do to the clams? I understand that right now the razor clams are closed from Port Orford south because of domoic acid. These are issues that are not being addressed. Someone spoke about, what about servicing these things? I got a buddy that lives in Kalinga, says that he's been to Tehachapi. You can see oil leaking down the blades. I've seen video footage on YouTube of where they've over-rotated, caught fire. Who's going to service that?
Yeah.
We can't even keep the weather buoys out here at Point St. George or Blanco properly moored to survive some of these winter storms. How in the hell are we going to take a turbine that is quite a bit larger, floating, that's going to have twice the weight underwater as there is over water to count for the deflection of the wind? What are we going to do when one of those breaks loose? Those are questions that need to be answered way before we ever build one, before they ever go in place. Whether it's chains or cable that hold these things to a mooring system on the ocean floor, don't matter. We've got to know now, because if them things break loose, yeah, you're going to see them on radar, but that ain't going to stop them from washing up on our beach. We need more answers. And Mr. Smith, I thank you for, I was unaware that Oregon Department of Energy even had a comment period. And that's something that we all need to be engaged on, and telling Oregon Department of Energy, they need to put a stop on this until we get solid answers. Without solid answers, we're dooming ourselves. I don't want to see my grandkids or my great grandkids paying for our mistakes now. We already have that problem. Let's stop and look now for the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, my name is Summer Madison, Director of Economic Development and Tourism for Curry County, as well as Southport. And some things I want to point out is, we.
Hey, Robin, can you come here?
Come on down,
Okay, so I'm right here. Representative Smith, thank you. I know when you spearhead efforts like House Bill 3375, that's because you want to make sure that rural Curry County continues to have a place in that conversation. And so for that, I appreciate that. Also, our Board of Commissioners in early of 2020 signed a resolution, Commissioner, stating their investment in the conversation as well.
Alternative energy.
Yes. Yes, alternative energy. That means looking at everything and not just, who's offering the biggest dollar. But I encourage you to look at where we were and what our communities were excelling at and thriving with timber, and how that was taken from us. And it's taken us this long just to get to where we're at now. And two of our biggest economic drivers in this community, in this whole county, is tourism and fishing. And it seems to me that we continue to push back every time the feds say, well, look at the little Southern Oregon coast, you know, down there at the very end of the state, there's only 23,000 of them. They're not gonna raise a big stink. Well, I'm telling you what, they don't know. They might find out, right? And so when you, it floors me in the importance of stakeholder engagement. Here at the very end of that statement, it says, you know, we're creating these task force, we want to identify areas of significant promise, blah, 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 and steps towards resolving potential conflict. That tells me that they might come to the table and say, look, we really want to invest there, and here's what we have to offer. I'm not getting that. I'm getting we have all these committees and task force, and we have big dollars, and so your voice won't be heard. And so I encourage you to think about the impacts. If you look at this map, these huge, I don't know if you've seen how big, they are monstrous. They're planned to be laid out right there along Samuel Boardman Scenic Corridor. Do you know how much in tourism we bring in? I bet every person in this room is somehow tied to a tourism-driven job. That's what's sustaining our economy right now. Is it what we want? No. But are we gonna let that be taken away from us too? Because I can tell you what, if I start seeing Instagram tags that are hashtag big propellers, you know, staged at natural bridges, I'm gonna be kind of irritated about that. You know, and I'm not sure that the trade-off for the lack of fishing, which is significant with cultural perspective in our communities. I mean, you want to talk about grassroots cool people, and I don't want to be known for turbines. And look, yeah, they might bring some jobs, but sometimes the money is not as important as our identities. And we don't want to lose that in the process.
Thank you. Let's take one more here. Yep. Come on out.
My name is Sharon Glenn. I hate this kind of stuff. I came from the land of turbines, the gentleman talked about. Tehachapi. I live south of Tehachapi, hillsides and hillsides of turbines. When it first came out, it was a great idea. I'm all for good energy and sufficient and clean energy. But they sit out there, have them broken. Turbines can't be discarded. They've got to be buried somewhere. Initially, people got involved in that because of the great benefit for tax write-off from the government, plus they need some good money on the returns on the energy. But when that having to fix that turbine because it broke, well, that's too expensive. So they sit unfixed and they boil and they're horrible. The pristine area of the desert, you can get by with that, there's not a lot of homes there. But I'm curious why they picked Gold Beach or the southern coast, the most pristine coast in Oregon, I think. Why didn't they pick Portland? Why didn't they pick somewhere else? It's a done deal, you guys. They're already in stage one, and this is the first I've heard of it. Our legislators didn't let us know. I appreciate us being able to have a voice, but I'm not sure it's gonna make a whole lot of difference. This is billions of dollars. So if you can do anything, like she has said, contact the energy people, let them know what you think and start screaming, because tell your neighbors, because this is gonna go unless we do something. And it is our property. It's our right to say something, and thank you for that, because they didn't have to give us this right. Thank you for that. And I know you've been busy with this, but I'm really disappointed. Really disappointed it's gotten this far. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go with the question, and we have a couple people waiting online to give a comment, and then the hands for popping, so I'll try to keep track. We'll get to you. Okay, let's go with your question.
I came in late and I'm sorry, I couldn't get here earlier. So I don't know if you've covered this or not. I'd like to know who's paying for all this?
You.
Yeah, I know. I knew the answer. I was just throwing the question. I also want to know why they think this is so great to put these turbines up. I'm also from Southern California,
Most of them are broke. Most of them are not repaired. They're ugly. They make a lot of noise. On top of that, California hasn't improved any. They still don't have enough electricity. Texas is another state that has a ton of turbines. They don't have enough electricity. They're having blackouts all the time. They have problems with them all the time. So what makes them think it's going to miraculously be out in our ocean, floating out there doing a great job?
And I don't know if I can answer your
I bet you
question.
can.
But some other people may. Online, we have a few people, more than a few, extremely knowledgeable, and let's give them a chance.
These things, I don't know if you guys know, these are 900 feet tall plus. So in order to hold that up, how big is the platform gonna need to be? And yeah, it floats, but those cables come down, boats aren't gonna be able to go by. I mean, it's not gonna happen, number one. What about the whales out there and the fish out there? That's gonna be a dead thing. And like he said, what if we have a tsunami? I mean, we haven't had one, but we have a tsunami area. So what happens? They just get pushed onto shore and all of us suffer with it. That's not good. And these things are, I'm sorry, ugly. There's no other word for it. I happen to have an ocean view. I don't want to look at it. But I also want fishermen to go fish. That's why we live here. Why don't we put it up? Hood River, big wind area, big wind area. Let's put them up there.
You're making fabulous points. Really good questions. So,
hello.
Are you on?
We are.
Heather.
We've got some
Okay.
people, we've got some people teed up that would like to give some comment. I do not know the name of the gentleman from the automotive store, but I hope you didn't think I was debating you. I apologize. I'd love to have a additional conversation offline. So I won't take up more time there. And I heard David say I was debating. I'm not. We've got Mike O'Connell up first from Pacific Seafood, and following Mike, Scott McMullen has his hand raised.
Heather, Scott had his hand up first, so go ahead, Scott, if that's okay.
Scott.
Thank you, Mike. My name is Scott McMullen. I'm from Astoria, and I used to own a shrimp trawler, shrimp and bottom fish trawler, and I fished in the mud hole, which is entirely part of the Coos Bay call area. So I'm somewhat familiar with that ground. And although I don't have any kind of an engineering degree or anything like that, I do understand physics a little bit. When I was fishing, we'd use big shackles to hold our trawl blocks to the outriggers, that sort of thing. They might have an 1.125" diameter shackle pin in it. And when they'd get stuck, we'd have to get a big crescent wrench. We had a 15-inch crescent wrench. And if that wasn't big enough, we get an 18-inch crescent wrench. And if we still couldn't get the shackle undone, we'd slip on a piece of pipe we called a cheater bar. And then that extra doubling of the length of the handle gave a lot of leverage, and it would undo that shackle pin. So I understand leverage a little bit. We're talking about devices here, wind turbines, that have a lever arm of over 500 foot of leverage. And I tried to find out what a 12 megawatt turbine weighs on top of that 500 foot lever. I could not find the weight. I found that a 107 meter blade weighs 55 tons. 3 of those, 165 tons just for the blades. The nacelle, I didn't find online quickly any weight, but I know that a nacelle for a 2.7 megawatt turbine, less than a fourth of the size of a 12, that one was over 70 tons. So we've got this massive weight that is over 500 feet up. Now, if we were in a stable on the ground, anchored securely bolted into the earth, that would be one thing. But we're not. We're on a platform that will shift and roll. There is no way to make that so that it is solid like on land. So even a small shift at the base is going to mean a much larger shift with this massive weight at the top. So just think about how that's going to work. And then I think about the Crab Commission sends out every year to the crab fleet. They send out alerts, warnings when the Weather Service sees big swells coming. And usually it'll say National Weather Service, long period swell. I'm looking at the last one I found in my email box. It was from November 10th or December 10th, 2021. It said the height of the swells 20 foot, but it said 1 in 10 could be 25 foot, 1 in 100 could be 33 foot. And the max for this particular forecast was 40 foot. Now 20-foot swells, we have those all, every winter. We also get forecasts even higher from time to time. So imagine when you have swells that are 40, 50, 60 foot, maybe not every swell, maybe it's 1 in 100. Maybe that 1 in 1,000 swell is massive. But think of that lever arm with several hundred tons, 500 foot in the air. And I say all this just to say we have to go very, very slow. We can't just permit all this only to find out that they don't survive our weather in the Pacific Ocean. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Oops, shaky ground. Heather?
Yes, we've got Mike Okaneski up next. And I think for now that's it, though I will read a comment that came in from Senator Armitage, who I think is no longer on, but go ahead, Mike. And if you're speaking, we can't hear you. Are you muted, Mike?
Yeah, sorry about that. Can you hear me now? Okay.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, I'm just going to read this off. But I'm hoping some of this will apply to questions that have been asked and some general information that I've been tracking now for 3.5 years. But good afternoon. My name is Mike Okaneski. I'm a fishery consultant with Pacific Seafood. I began my career with Pacific in Warrenton in 1994. I worked 25 years for Pacific as a plant and regional manager, along with sales, fishery policy work. I'm still active on 3 Fishery Management Council subpanels, plus multiple fishery committees. I've worked a total of 53 years in the fishing industry in all 3 coast states, Alaska and Canada. My primary work for the last 3.5 years has been offshore wind energy. I'm tracking offshore wind energy events in all 3 West Coast states, as they will have implications for Pacific processing plants, our vessels, and future business planning. I began focus on offshore wind energy after attending a presentation at the New England Science Center. I later had dinner with the NOAA Fisheries Chief Scientist, Dr. Cisco Warner. He cautioned me that industry needed to pay close attention to offshore wind energy development. He said preliminary Bureau of Ocean Energy Management targets, BOEM targets, were for 10,000 turbines. Approximately, that would be with the 15 gigawatt ones, or excuse me, megawatt ones are talking now, about 150 gigawatts and over 10,000 square miles of ocean. These things have to be kept about a mile apart, and the bigger they get, the more they have to be kept apart. If Mark Cooper testifies later, I think he'll explain that part. The Oregon State Legislature has passed legislation promoting a 3 gigawatt by 2030, but the call area BOEM laid out recently would accommodate 18 gigawatts. This is just the opening salvo. One market one major conflict of offshore wind energy versus fishing and BOEM's achievement of credible environmental review process is that BOEM has no solid answers for scope and location of projects, stakeholder engagement, and for transmission of power to shore. Most shoreside power grids are woefully short of capacity. BOEM does only a minimal and incomplete environmental assessment, EA, prior to leasing. They claim to execute a more thorough National Environmental Policy Act review prior to construction, but by then, billions of dollars may have been paid to the government by lessees. The likelihood of aborting a project at this point is infinitesimal. This process makes it impossible to analyze the total cumulative impacts to the fishing industry, the ultra-productive California current ecosystem, and the onshore environment. A valid NEPA programmatic environmental impact statement, PEIS, must be required prior to conducting any business activity that supports construction or pre-established result. BOEM's NEPA process is flawed, incomplete, sequentially reversed, and tailored to be predetermined to a predetermined outcome. It cannot be deemed an objective and unbiased environmental process. Additionally, there needs to be an individual projects EISs for each wind farm before construction begins on each individual wind farm. This is warranted as developers will employ different equipment and methodologies, and ocean and ecologies vary by area. BOEM plays by their own rules. They are not accountable for their actions. They use a warped variant of NEPA in their own design. They have only superficial check-the-box exercises for public engagement. BOEM operates under a special exemption process that allows little or no opportunity to change their plans to industrialize and privatize our oceans. There is zero estimate of the total impacts to our fisheries and environment after all the construction projects are completed. In addition, the NOAA survey ships and other oceanographic vessels will no longer be able to survey the areas occupied by the wind farm structures and cable layouts. This will leave a paucity of fishery and environmental data that will prevent scientists from calculating ecological or habitat degradation. I only briefly touch on the impacts to fishing. It is really a simple equation. If BOEM grants leases of large-scale areas to build wind farms where fishermen presently fish, it will no longer be possible for most vessels to fish those areas. Rex Leach stated he has caught 70% of his harvest over the last 40 years in the 2 call areas off Southern Oregon. Remove fishable real estate, you remove the fishing industry. We heard a fishery scientist state in Coos Bay at an industry rally, wind provides the necessary energy that supports ocean life. Areas with the highest profile of wind velocities are often the most productive waters the ocean has. Wind impacts energy into the ocean that triggers a number of hydrological dynamics, which fosters upwelling. This in turn brings nutritional elements near the surface and is the platform for California currents productivity, one of the 4 most productive ocean food webs on the planet. This supports the tiniest form of plankton up to 100-ton blue whales. We do not know exactly what impacts may occur to ocean ecological systems without more research and analysis. But studies in the North Sea indicate there are significant reductions in wind energy levels in the lee of turbines. Downwind features called wind wakes change ocean hydrology. And the article I'm referring to is Messing with the Environment to Fight Climate Change by P. Goslin on 26 February 2022 on study of effects of wind turbines on ocean by Huron Corporation. Wind farms are altering the North Sea is the title. Some observations. Wind turbines pose obstacles to water and air. Turbines weaken the wind as they extract kinetic energy to generate electricity. These are quotes from the article. These are characterized by reduced wind speed. The wind speed deficits can propagate up to 70 kilometers behind the wind turbines, or wind turbines and the farms, 43 miles. This in turn could affect the horizontal currents and stratification of water. And perhaps most importantly, the changes in flow and mixing are likely to affect plankton production and food systems and may influence how protected areas work. At the least, these changes to wind and its kinetic energy need to be researched and analyzed. To be deemed credible, this must occur prior to leasing and a collection of developer lease funds. Where do we go next? The fishing industry needs to stand united on the offshore wind energy issue. We need to be vocal. We need to win public sentiment and make politicians aware of our plight. Some environmental groups are now expressing the same concerns for ocean productivity. We have stood with them on one letter, and we may do so again. If we don't win this battle, our oceans will be sold to the highest bidder, which will likely have its headquarters in a foreign country. Please make this known to your politicians at all levels. There are better ways to combat climate change. We do not need to sacrifice our oceans and fishing communities to an unproven technology. And thank you for allowing me that.
Thank you, Mike.
That's it on right now online here, Elena. I'm sure we'll get some more, but maybe take it back to the main room.
Okay. All right. Leonard, you're up, and then.
Thank you.
Boyd.
Good evening. My name's Leonard Krug. I live in Brookings, Oregon here, and I'm president of the Oregon Anglers Alliance. With over 65,000 members, we are the largest angling advocacy group in the state of Oregon. We represent commercial, recreational, tribal fishers, seafood processors, other businesses related. And I've got interesting points I think you may not have heard so far. Like people said, this is untested water, no pun intended, we're going into right now. And you know, the Oregon Hatchery Research Center has one study of their own and a couple of other published studies that demonstrate what happens when you put, say, a piece of rebar in a tank with salmon. When they put the piece of rebar in there, the salmon are all facing this way. You can move that piece of rebar around and change their orientation, directional orientation. What is even more interesting is when you take an object with dissimilar metals in it, like an underground or undersea power conductor, they become completely disoriented. That really plays with their homing ability. So when we're talking about putting thousands of miles of cable in the ocean and thousands of miles of conductor and then putting a current into that conductor, what's that going to do to our salmon, North American salmon here? It could crash them. Not to mention all the pelagic species and the echolocation ability of the whales and down the crab. We don't know. It's untested ground. We've never tried any real world stuff with this. So it's pretty dangerous. So anytime you bite off a project this big, I've never heard any risk reward profile with this. What's the risk? What's the reward? We know what the risk is. We've got a pristine ocean out here, one of the most pristine ecosystems in the world. That's why we live here. Right. Now the reward, 3 gigawatts of electricity. I've heard people say, well, that's a lot of electricity. How much is 3 gigawatts? Let's see. 1 gigawatt is 1,000 megawatts. That's 3,000 megawatts. That doesn't help either. Actually, if you look at California's annual demand, they are just almost 200,000 gigawatts annually to power that state. So that puts it in perspective. It's a very, very small reward for a very big risk. I guess I'd just close by saying, getting a hold of the Department of Energy and having them put a halt on this. They can't come across state beaches unless the state lets them. They'd be dead in the water. And otherwise, just vote. Come November, vote for the candidates that understand and support natural resources and our values and ideals. Curry County, only 30-some% of Curry County here voted, period. So we need to do better than that come November. And so thank you.
I'm only gonna read you 20 pages, okay? I've been coming to meetings here since this place was built. This is the biggest crowd I've ever seen. It's no thing. You just mentioned voting. Thank you, Leonard. So get to the polls. You gotta get lined up, teamed up, and we got a lot of work to do. When David Brocksmith and I first started talking about this 3 years ago, he right off the bat said, well, there's two things really, and that list grew, that really concerned me. One was the ratepayers, and we were convinced, assured that it would be for the developers. So that was the biggest impact. Then it was number two as a fisherman, and that really got our attention. The third thing was the salmon GPS system. Leonard, where'd you go? Yeah, that's a huge concern. So now we're, in working with BOEM, okay, I'm not here to defend them, but they took the Port Orford call center out of the cycle, which I thought was, a good move, if, even in this very preliminary stage. And then, originally we were talking 18 miles out, okay? Now we're at a minimum of 28. What does that mean? Okay, would you rather see, and I'm not here to give you a sales pitch, pro con either way. I've made my whole living on Rogue River and other rivers. So I've been known to go with the flow sometimes, but usually against the flow. So when you look at what that means to this community, you're looking at the new Green Deal, the Biden administration. It's coming. You heard Mr. Automotive here. I apologize. I know you, but I forgot your name. But you said it very well. What do we have to look at? My job as a county commissioner is to see what are going to be the impacts on my citizens, on our environment, and on our services. And so I took a real serious look at this and have stayed with it. I have a lot to learn, obviously. But those impacts can be very costly. And so the more I looked into this and encourage Representative Brocksmith on his House Bill 3375 for the planning, for the research, so we could understand. And that led us to Eastern United States and the successes they're having there. Okay. I've got information here that I'm not saying I accept this for flying sinker, also not a pun intended, but they have not paid the fishermen off or paid them not to fish. What they have done is figured a way to compensate them and grow the system. Look it up for yourself. Give me your email address and I'll send you this information. You can assess it and see if it's accurate, reliable, or could be used on the West Coast. But the information is there, and they really did promote and encourage and bolster the fishing industry, according to these articles. Okay, so when I look at whether it's the Biden administration or Republican administration, whatever, we have to have a seat at the table, and that's what I have worked really hard to make sure that I understand and learn all I can. The state, bipartisan, has showed some support. That's helped. So as we move forward on this, I'm saying, would you rather look at towers 20, a minimum of 28 miles out, where you might be able to see the tips of binoculars, or have every spare inch with solar panels or onshore windmills? I'm not saying I have an opinion. I'm just offering that as a side note on this. The developers, we have to be really careful that we don't get sold, obviously, bill of goods. But the success stories, even in Europe, okay, now there's some different conditions. Essentially, we are comparing apples and apples, but in Europe, they're they're 20 years ahead of the West Coast. You know, somebody mentioned a minute, and the East Coast is 5 to 10 years ahead. Okay, somebody earlier mentioned kids and grandkids. We're running out of power in Southern Oregon. We don't do nuclear. We have no more coal plants. We're removing hydroelectric dams. Okay, and it costs a lot of fossil fuel to run solar and onshore windmills. Okay, why doesn't it? Somebody said, why don't they have it at Portland? Portland doesn't have the wind. Prairie County is the Saudi Arabia wind capital of the world. Can that truly be turned into renewable energy, a renewable resource? I got a long ways to go before I'll offer opinion on that publicly, but I'm going to research it when it comes to the environment. Oh, by the way, the other ones were, yeah, the critters, you know, the fish, the whales. So, and that list is growing of those concerns. So I'm here. I'm going to watch it extremely close, but put a lot of people to work. Would it be good overall for environments? Yes, the cable's coming on shore. I worked with commissioners all up down the Oregon coast, and they have some strong opinions about that. And that was expressed here today as well, which I'm grateful for. So if all those issues can be settled, and the fishing actually, according to these articles, proof is in the pudding. If it's reliable, you can decide, would it really benefit our community? And the last thing I'll leave you is with this. You know, 65, 66%, you taught me this years ago, David, reminded me, 66% of our acreage here in Curry County is owned by the federal government. We're always begging for money to keep our basic law enforcement going. You know, public health, all the above. I mean, it's a constant fight. It's a fight I like being in, and there's people before me that did a good job, but it's, you know, things are just getting warmed up a little bit. So the point is this, if these leases come through on the coast of Oregon, and by the way, we're able to sell power to California, benefit our people. And one more thing, people in the eastern United States, export power. That doesn't mean we're going to do away with our own responsibility to take care of our homes, businesses, and schools. Okay, so people in California are needing power. You know, they grow a lot of food down there. It's part of a community thing. All right. So I'm not here for or against, but I'm gonna learn all I can, because if we don't have a seat at the table and they come in, and it's been said here today, they might just tell us exactly what we're gonna do, what they're not gonna do. And people that I work with, that I associate with, they're not gonna let that happen. So yeah, I could talk a lot more. That's enough. Thank you.
1 second, please. Heather?
Yeah, I was just going to share this 3-minute. Let's see if you can hear it.
Fish is the only sustainable resource that we have. You don't plant the seed, you don't fertilize it. All we do is harvest it, and they take care of themselves.
We see this abuse of government that is green light project to move forward without any people like yourself, without any studies being done on the economic impact and the impact of wildlife, the impact of the right whales.
Both pile driving for the wind turbines, as well as operational wind turbines, that confuses whales. It messes up their ability to navigate via echolocation and to communicate with each other. And what has happened overseas in the UK is that a tremendous amount of whales have beached themselves.
This is the carcass of a 5th sperm whale that has washed up on England's east coast, becoming confused and beaching in the shallow waters of the North Sea.
Since the windmill companies have been here surveying with their seismic survey vessels, we've seen a whole bunch of whales washing up in this area.
I can understand an environmentalist wanting to protect fish, but if they're really serious about protecting fish, they would be up in arms about what's going to happen to the bottom, because fish depend on the bottom.
Worsted did the project. They put in turbines that wound up changing the tidal patterns and created sediment pools 6 kilometers long and up to 500 meters wide that can be seen from space. They took a vibrant local fishing area and destroyed it.
The current lifespan of a wind tower is 25 to 30 years. once these platforms are put in place, that ground is lost forever. So you're sacrificing hundreds of years of production of food for a 25-year plan is bound to fail. They haven't worked anywhere in the world.
We have perfect examples of other countries that have tried this. Germany, for example, is on this path to get to 50% renewable. And now freezing deaths are on the rise. They're now subsidizing coal-generated electricity.
Germany is turning on their coal plants because it's not blowing, the wind is not blowing.
Obviously, they can't function when there's no wind, and when there's too much wind, they break them.
Like what we're seeing today.
Just days after going online, one of the Block Island Wind Farm's 5 turbines has been knocked out of commission.
The fact that the first Block Island wind farm in the country, 4 out of 5 turbines don't work right now. They have stress fractures inside the turbines. The 2 cables that they put in 2016 under the ground came undone 8 months later, and they're still 5 years later trying to figure out how to get them back in the ground.
I think when it's all said and done, these things are going to prove to be an environmental catastrophe.
We need affordable, reliable electricity, and wind and solar just haven't proven they can be part of that mix.
People want a quick solution. There are no easy solutions.
So, Yelena, I just wanted to add, there are several lawsuits going on the East Coast between the fishing industry and the federal government. And so I'm interested in seeing the articles that the commissioner's referring to, because I work closely with a lot of colleagues from the fishing industry on the East Coast. And they are, by and large, not satisfied or happy with the process back there. So I'm not debating, but I just want people to understand there's a lot of greenwashing going on. There's a lot of misinformation out there. And I think everybody needs to get educated. So I do have a public comment online from Mr. Josh Whaley, who is a resident of Brookings and a fisherman. If we're ready to take a public comment from online, Yelena.
Yep, let's do that.
Okay, Josh, go ahead.
Hi there, I'm Josh Whaley. Sorry I couldn't be there today. We're actually out in the ocean fishing. No wind turbines yet, but from every part of this process that I have attended so far, it sounds like a total steamroll, and that's something that should not be acceptable to our community, our county, and our industry. There's always this conflict in me when people ask questions about this, and kind of just want to say, well, which answer do you want? The wind energy critic in me or the fisherman in me? The wind energy critic says, how in the world are they going to maintain these things as a fisherman? If we had a way to have a maintenance-free floating vessel out here, we would have done that a long time ago. How do we survive these conditions? Then there's the fisherman in me that just says, man, if we'd have known that this ocean was up for lease a long time ago, we knew we could have rented real estate out here. I know a few fishermen that would love their own crab grounds named after them. So we've had all this conversation, all this kind of lip service leading up to now. And the thing that keeps coming to mind is we have weather conditions, we have, environmental conditions, we have standards that we are held to. Somebody mentioned, how is this going to impact whales earlier? I can tell you as a fisherman, the crab industry is held to a very stringent standard. Not one are we supposed to impact or entangle or have any effect on. BOEM's answer to date is we'll do the best we can. They're simply working with a different set of rules. They're working with a different set of standards. And when we ask for metrics, they don't have any good answers for that. They won't provide us what metrics they are using, because I believe they don't want us to know we are, they kind of get to do what they want for the most part. Yeah, they have to check a few boxes, but those boxes and those, we'll call it issues that they may have to come up and deal with, I don't believe that they are meant to stop them from continuing their process. The last meeting I went to, they talked about construction not even being kicked off for 15 years. How is a windmill going offshore, the technology involved in that, not going to be obsolete? Whatever they're planning for now, how is that not going to be obsolete when we can't even go to Fred Meyer and bring home a printer that isn't obsolete by the time we get home? So I guess that's my piece. I'm a third generation fisherman. Hopefully we've got several generations to follow. And if there is one thing that scares me among environmental impacts, fishing restrictions, global warming, you name it, if there is something that scares me, it is BOEM, because they just simply don't have rules that they need to follow, similar to what we do. And it sounds like, as of right now, they kind of just get to do what they want unless we do something about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Josh. All right, please. Well, one at a time. The lady behind you, and then there is a. And I apologize, you've been waiting. Okay, so let me clarify, folks who will be lining up here, will you be intending to speak? Okay, okay, you will go next, and then you, sir.
Thank you. Georgia Cockerham, I live in Brookings, and I just had a quick question. I've learned a tremendous amount this evening that I didn't know before about this, and I've heard a couple of people mention why our waters along here. And I wonder if anywhere in BOEM's study, they have looked at the amount of vibrations that will be caused with the pilings, with the constant movement of the machinery, the vibrations into the ground, and the uniqueness we have of a Cascadia fault out here, and what effect those vibrations are going to have on our Cascadia fault. So that's a question that I would think, if anything, might slow them down. It doesn't have anything to do specifically with fishing, but it certainly has to do with the potential for tremendous natural damage if they wake that fault up prematurely. Thank you.
Thank you. And I believe that that would be something, if you were to consider submit your comments, that's something to ask in your comment, pose a question, put it in front of them. They probably will not answer. However, the time will come when environmental assessment will be done and you follow up again with that question, and that's when they will have to be addressing the impacts.
David Barnes. I came down here probably a few years ago now to the first meeting that they had on this. It was in the other room over here. They had the people who were actually the businesses behind the idea came down, and I guess it was the kickoff to this whole thing. And I've kind of been following along ever since then. Back then, the original plan was to run cables from here into Humboldt Bay because there's no transmission lines to get the power that comes in here out. I spoke to somebody from Coos Curry Electric this afternoon, and they confirmed that with me. Their transmission lines end at the state line. They don't transmit down into California. So I don't know what they're planning on doing with it once they get it here. A couple of things that I heard earlier that I find troubling is that BLM is going to lease this land out to people that is off of Curry's shoreline, but Curry County isn't going to get any money from that lease. You know, another thing, the power is going to come in and be sold by the people who produce it. Again, Curry's not going to get anything. I can't help but wonder, as Leonard Krug said before, what's our reward in Curry County for letting this happen off of here? I don't see it. Another thing I've heard a couple people comment about fisheries. There is no, the fishery on the West Coast is completely different from the fishery in the Philippines, on the East Coast, off of Scotland. It's unique in its own right. You know, no fishery is the same from one coast to another, any area. So we're not really, it's something that is a purely experimental situation. We don't have any point of comparison to look at. And the last thing I wanted to say, or to find out actually, recently the Port Orford call area got removed from the list, I heard. How did they do that?
That's what we want to know.
And how do we start that movement here to
Yes.
get the Brookings Gold Beach call area removed?
Let me start that.
That's what we need to know right now.
We don't want it.
That's what we need to know.
So again, if I had the wand, things would be a lot different. So that's one of the reasons why the federal delegation representatives were on the line.
Okay.
But not to get too partisan, I personally believe, as it's a gimmick that by the Democrats in the legislature, that they move forward with, you know, everything so that, you know, they can then come back later and say, and take something away and say, see, we gave you something, right? And so I believe that was the tactic and why the Port Orford call area, because it was the banded high spot.
It was the smallest call area out of all of them.
But it was also the one that had the most slope. It already has issues with fishing because it has some.
It's very, very sensitive habitat
Yeah.
and very valuable for various fisheries. It was not meant to be there in the first place.
And ours isn't.
So it
Oh,
is-
absolutely
so
is, absolutely is.
So Bowen, before, when they did the proposed, before they narrowed it down to the call areas for comment, they removed that call area. Again, I believe, it was never intended to be there, but they wanted to just say, see, we gave you something.
Oh, really?
But-
That's what I have to do, of course.
But I think the approach that may help is just what Heather mentioned earlier, the resolution that Newport passed, where basically they stated that they will prioritize the existing ocean users over the non-existing offshore wind development industry.
Okay, because I was at the meeting last night and I saw one of the slides that the gentleman put up making a presentation. Bowen listed fisheries as their last concern in all of this. It was dead last on their list. So, you know,
They don't care about us.
I want to, you know, like I said, I want to know how we get an area removed. You know, there has to be somebody to appeal to, there has to be somebody to apply to. We have, just in this room alone, there's dozens of people who make their living off the ocean. And that's just in a small room. You know, there's a lot of people out here who this impacts, and I think we need to have a voice in it. I've approached city councilors about them passing resolutions opposed to the call areas off of here. I plan on approaching the Board of Commissioners and asking them to do the same thing, to reverse their resolution from 2020 and to pass one opposed to wind farms off the coast of Perry County, just because it is so dangerous. There's such a great risk that we just don't know. And I'm a risk averse kind of person. So, you know, that's all I got to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just to add to what Dave had to say, that's one of the reasons why we're here, is so that you can have the information in front of you to make your comments not only heard to the legislature through the Oregon Department of Energy process, but also to BOEM through the comment period through BOEM as well. And then there's also another card that, do you have the small cards here or no?
No, from the rally.
Yeah.
I wish we printed them.
So you have the opportunity also to send emails to your federal delegation, because they need to know about your concerns as well.
Hi, my name is Dale Donnelly, and I'm probably the least guy to speak. I was an old farmer, can you hear me?
I couldn't hear your name.
My name is Dale Donnelly. I came here 6 years ago. hitchhiked out here when I was 18, slept on the beach, Gold Beach. 45 years later, here I am. I watched what's happened back in farm country. Back when the milk cows and took the eggs to town to buy groceries. I've always marveled at the little, let's get off track, the little county fair you got up here. That's what it used to be where it come from. Back there, it's all factory farming. You work for the government, you work for the corporations, you work for the Cargies and the Bungies and little drivers, because that's where everything goes. You know why they produce corn? It's not to feed you, and it's not to produce that to put in gasoline. Because it produces the most tons per feed grain in the world. It takes the most inputs, the most handling, the most processing, and the most trucking. It has nothing to do with people. It has to do with money. I believe that in all my heart, because I've seen what's happened back there. I came here and I couldn't believe it, how beautiful this is, and how simple a lot of ways this life is. You have something that's been, I don't know if you realize what you got. Have you ever thought about what do you do when you rely upon, they call it green energy, okay? What do you do for peak load? You go back there when you run all the center pivots, right? To produce all this corn. You have to have peak load. You know what I'm talking about? Peak load is when you hit a point where the system, it can't take care of it anymore. So they have to kick in other systems. This is dependent upon the wind. Now, I'm not, been here only 6 years. Does the wind blow all the time out there? Most of the time, right? But is it going to run these generators all the time? Do you realize in order to have, it's not about taking care of the people, it's about money. You're going to have powerhouses to run electricity if you want to keep peak load. Look at California, blackouts, brownouts, right? The next 6 years, they have plans to take out 80 power plants offline. To take it to a third world country, basically. What you have here is special. And the power you have is right here, the land. It's got to come across the land. I saw that back there, how they promised people. I've seen that. I come from where they have the windmills. And the lady's right. They break, they don't run, they leak, and there they sit. It's gonna help you some. Number one, where's the power go to? They gotta build a system to do it, and what we need to do then, if the government's got 65% of land, why aren't they doing something with that? If this is taken away, and it's in the works, I've seen how they do it. They get the deal done, and they bring you in, they have the meetings, you get people, whatever, riled up. And then they just do the thing. The powers in the counties. The powers in the state. They got to bring the power across the land, right? They can't transmit it through the air. Don't know if you'll ever stop it out here in the ocean, but the powers, whatever, through laws, through lawsuits, whatever it takes. But I've seen it back there. There's very few farmers, and they're huge, and they work for the corporations, and they work for the government, and they put gas. They make, they're going to crank out more ethanol, put in gas, and make up the difference, right? Which ruins your. I've been through that. Ruins your boat motor, right? I understand that now. Don't lose what you got. Fight it on the local level, fight it on the state level, whatever you got to do. The feds are the feds. That's all about them making money for power. And I'm not condemning people. There's great people in the federal government, but the big money is the big money, always will be. If you want to, you look at biochar, what they did, they say how great that is. They stripped the land of all the trees and the corporations left it. Those corporations, where they come from, are going to put this out here. They'll never take care of those things once they're broken down because they're corporations. who are you gonna sue? Who's gonna take care of it? It is all about money and power. So it comes down to, on a state level, county level, you say, no, you can't bring the power lines in. That's all I know. Otherwise, you end up, you're gonna be working for the feds. And it's not about providing more electricity. It's about them metering how much electricity you're gonna get.
Hi everyone, I'm Sunny Capper and I'm here on behalf of County Office Audubon Society today. And first of all, thank you for trying your best to have our backs on this and to the Coastal Caucus. Oregon's offshore waters are extremely productive for marine life, as we all know. Part of one of only 4 major eastern boundary upwelling ecosystems in the world. Put that into scale, that's only 1% of the world of the ocean's area, but it accounts for 20% of the world's ocean fisheries harvest. We have laws that prohibit shopping centers going in on private productive farmland, but the push to develop floating offshore wind seems to not sufficiently recognize that what we have in our ocean is already extremely valuable. The high productivity of Oregon's coastal waters is important not only for economically valuable fisheries, but for wildlife as well. Oregon's coast hosts half of the West Coast seabird breeding habitat, and the South Coast hosts most of this. And our clean, cold, rich upwelling offshore waters draw 70 species of birds from all around the Pacific to forage, plus several species of whales. Siting is the single most important decision that will get made for wind energy areas in terms of reducing conflicts with fisheries and wildlife. Our biggest concern is that BOEM's process does not allow for adequate, realistic, or transparent analysis of conflicts of cumulative impacts until very late in the game, after the wind energy companies have already heavily invested. Even more concerning, state and federal agencies are purportedly now considering analyzing installation of 2 to 3 gigawatts, but industry and agencies are at the same time also talking about expansion of 17 to 20 gigawatts, which is what we talked about, that whole area could be consumed by. And with additional call areas in the future, and that's a scale that's 10 times larger than what we're already talking about. If we open the door to larger installation, there will be much greater impacts to marine ecosystems. And how will a decision get made about the appropriate scale for floating offshore wind? At this point, it seems that outside energy companies will be the ones left to make this decision for us all. To conclude, we are deeply concerned about the impacts of climate on our communities and on our fish and birds and wildlife that are the backbone of our current economy and are important to so many of us. Yet we want to make sure that the proposed solutions are truly feasible and will help us become resilient as a community. We should choose the most cost-effective and efficient renewable energy options and locate them in places that will do the least harm. We'd like to see a future where we can shift to renewable energy, but without industrializing and degrading our most productive and valuable marine environments. The social, economical, and ecological values of our offshore environments deserve the utmost consideration in terms of scientific, social, and economic analysis, public engagement, and stewardship. Our communities and ecosystems deserve the protection and guidance of our state legislators. And thank you for trying to help us get there with that. And so now, as a comment on behalf of myself, I agree with everybody's passionate concern in this room tonight. I do not agree that the fat lady has sung, so to speak, and that it is a done deal. And I think that they want us to believe that. So we just let them steamroll us. And that we need to fight with everything we've got. And it's not a done deal until those turbines are out there spinning and wreaking havoc in our waters. So thank you all. And I hope everybody continues to speak their mind and fight this. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Sir?
Hi, I'm Joe Mason, originally from Livermore, moved up here about 4 years ago. Happy to be here. 2 things.
One, they keep mentioning jobs. US Wind Power moved into Livermore. They wiped out almost 1,000 acres of land to start putting up windmills. Okay, they made millions of dollars off the subsidies from our tax dollars, from the federal government. Talk about jobs, they had about 500 people employed. 90% of those people were from out of the area because they had not the technical knowledge to do anything. They hired a lot of laborers and grunts from out of Livermore to work the windmill area. And when the subsidies ended, they damn near went underwater because they couldn't afford to do all the stuff they were supposed to be doing. And like they said, the people that were from what, Tehachapi, half those windmills up there were turned off. Either there was too much wind, or not enough wind, or they were just broken. And we also had the dead birds. I mean, I'm not a fan of crows or, those type of birds, but, I hate seeing owls and eagles and falcons and hawks get killed all the time up there. The farmers, they told the ranchers, excuse me, they told the ranchers that they could run their cattle out there and their, sheep if they were going to do that. After a few years, you couldn't find a cattle or sheep out there on that land because of all the noise and the wind and everything else. They just left. So I'm kind of concerned about the fact that no matter what you do, especially to these windmills, they are going to cause problems in the water. And that's where all the difference in the fish habitats are going to go. Migrations, that's another thing I haven't seen. I haven't seen a migration history from England or Denmark or Scotland or any of those other places to see if they, before they put the windmills up, how the migration went to what the migration went to after the windmills went up. There's no data on that at all. Anyway, that's all what I had to say. So,
Thank you.
Thank you.
so,
The gentleman and then the woman.
Hello, my name is Mike Cooper. I've lived here a long time in the area for all my life. I agree with everything that people are saying, and the things I'm concerned about, something that you brought up, this windmill setting up here, it's got a cable going down and out someplace to a junction box, I understand. So you got 20 windmills out there, all going to this big junction box. Somebody mentioned that from that junction box, you got a cable going to shore. It probably won't go to Brookings. It'll go to Coos Bay, because they're the only ones right now, from what I understand, that can process the electricity. No matter what or where it goes, you were talking about this cable down on the ocean floor, going along, and with the tides and all, it just kind of like a snake out there. And it's just wiping away the ocean floor. Now, there's coral reefs out there, whatever, and there goes the fishing in that area. You've got 20 of these out there in a 30-mile stretch. So you're wiping out 30 miles of the bottom of the ocean with these cables. And then you got the other cable that's coming out of the junction box, whatever, that wherever it goes, there's going to be a swath of dead ocean out there again, where nothing's going to survive, people. And that's what these people need to know. I don't like environmentalists. Sometimes they have a good deal, but I think down the road, more environmentalists need to get involved and put a stop to this. That's my opinion. I don't want to see it.
Thank you.
Hi, thanks for the chance to speak. I don't want to get myself in hot water up here because I'm clearly not a Fisher person and you guys know a lot more about this than I do, but I've got some questions. It seems like with the bone process so untransparent and with the chance to stop things without environmental assessments and the assessments of what could happen to the fisheries before their leasing process takes place, that we're just really in a lot of trouble unless we can get a lot of things stopped before the leasing process takes place, if I'm understanding correctly.
This fall.
Yeah, this fall. And so what I'm wondering is it a good idea to try to get the state through, I don't know what fishing agency it would be, but to do some set-asides out there on the offshore to set aside for fishing so that, you know, the industrial placement of the wind turbines could not happen in those areas. Is that a possibility and is that a good idea?
State has no jurisdiction beyond 3 miles.
Beyond 3 miles.
These are 13 to 18 miles.
All right. Well, dang. Another thing, a concern I have is with the cables coming onshore. That's when we have an opportunity to use some, somebody else was saying some county, local jurisdiction or statewide jurisdiction to set really strict conditions on how those cables can be brought onto shore and the substations can be created and the power sent wherever it's going to be sent. Is this true that when the leasing process takes place, there's the potential for several different big companies to lease areas out there, and they would have their own set of cables coming onto shore? And that just seems disastrous to me in terms of the landscape and the potential to kind of wreck the way things function on land and the way they look in terms of our tourism industry. So am I right in thinking that the state and the county governmental agencies need to get ahead of the leasing process to set up strict regulations for how the cabling brought in and the substations and how that can take place? And also with regard to decommissioning, somebody was talking about decommissioning before. If any of these windmills go out, cannot be any longer maintained, are the companies themselves going to be responsible for the decommissioning and cleaning it all up?
Supposedly. If they're still in business, you know what I mean? That you really, that's the unknown. As you've heard somebody speak about before, where, you know, I believe it was a separate industry, but they basically just, they just kind of just left it.
Typically, they move it to one of their sub companies. Then they declare bankruptcy, walk away, and the federal government pays to back.
I have mentioned in the past, in this part of the topic, when it comes to decommissioning, that part of the lease provisions would be, there would need to be a hefty bonding floated, front loaded, so that they would need to make sure that those resources were there in the beginning, kept in a sub account for decommissioning in the future. Okay. As one thought in that discussion.
Okay, thanks. Well, I just want to say, I hope that we can stop this before the leasing process takes place, because once that takes place, we have our struggle with this is going to be even harder.
Thank you. And I really encourage people to call the representatives, the county commissioners, state representatives, congressional offices. That's another way. If we stay silent, there's no one to watch, I guess.
Ladies first. Yeah.
Come on, guys. Well,
Name is Dave Van Grunberg. I'm a Brookings resident. When I was young, we had a couple windmills on our ranch, which went from 5 to 250. 17 vegetation fires. And then there was an operating parameter. They could only operate between 5 and 10 miles an hour, which 95% of the time, and the Altamont was over 10, so the windows never turned. They went bankrupt. Another company came in, government subsidized them. They didn't get their money. And then by the time we leased our property out, not one of those windows was operating. And we couldn't get shit for the pasture. So my question is, since the county here is not going to get none of the power, we have none of the infrastructure, so what benefit is it? We're going to have light pollution. You're going to see those red lights out there 20 miles away flashing because it's a navigational hazard. And what are they going to do about that AC current that's going to be generating all the way along that power line? So my question then too is, what are they going to do about the hazmat issue? When one of them turbine seizes, petroleum based, got oil leaking, or it catches on fire, now it burns down to the ground. Who's going to clean this mess up? Coast Guard? Who's going to clean this up? And I just think it's another one of these government things that it's going to be subsidized, and pretty soon they're not going to be working, and they're just going to be sitting there, and we're going to be stuck with this mess. Cleaning it up as being local taxes. So that's all I got to say. Okay.
I didn't plan to come up here and speak. My name's Ann Moore. My husband Jim and I own a commercial fishing boat here in Brookings. My husband's been a commercial fisherman for over 50 years. And I know a lot of the other people here as well. I have a little different perspective. I actually have a degree in zoology also. I care about the animals, I care about the fish, I care about the people. I don't want these things out here. I love this area. I moved here because it's a beautiful area. When I met my husband, he could make a living doing something he loved. And that meant a lot to me. And honestly, you're telling us now we have 2 days to contact the Oregon Department of Energy comments. I read an article in the Curry Reporter from May 4th saying that Port Orford figured out maybe it's because they really weren't that, it really wasn't going to be that big of a deal, that Port Orford anyway. But we tend to get left out here down here. I saw on the news, I don't know if it was national news, I saw Coos Bay, all this stuff, everybody's all up in arms about this. Brookings, we have a few people here, and I'm really glad to see it, and I'm glad that you're working for us. We need the bigger people. I feel no matter what I say or do, my opinion doesn't matter. And I'm not going to count because I'm one person. I think I'm fairly educated. I think I could actually get on here and say something, but I honestly don't know what I say is going to count. And so I feel like on things like this, we need you guys to represent us and say, look, this is what's happening. We don't want it. And we don't want people coming in here and being big bullies and telling us what we can do or not do. Like the other gentleman, Josh Whaley said, we are so heavily regulated already. I used to sell tuna off the dock here for 20 years, but it became more and more regulated, and the Port of Brookings didn't really support me either. They wanted to charge me extra money for what I was trying to do. So I said, fine, I'm not going to do it anymore. It was kind of a neat thing, and people loved it. They loved coming down to our boat. But after a while, with all the extra fees and everything, and then the scrutiny of it, I'm doing everything completely right. And still, it just wasn't worth our while anymore. And so we kind of got out of that fishery. So right now, we're totally dependent on crab. We're getting close to retiring, but now I have a son-in-law in Newport. And my daughter, they own a commercial fishing boat there. I want this to keep going. And I need to find out how just one person like me can really make a difference. I've never felt like I did. Even with all my background and all my experience, and the fishermen above everybody, we all love the whales. I got to go out a few years ago, my first time to go out on the ocean, and we were just sport fishing for tuna. I'll never forget that experience. I was just in awe of everything. And I know how all these people just love that aspect of it. We don't want these towers out there. They can figure out something else. They don't come in here and bully us. And so we need to get the help from other people that can represent us. That's why we have you guys. That's why I just voted for you.
That's why I'm here.
I know, and that's what we need, your voice to say, okay, I'm representing all these people, and I know this is kind of what you're already saying, but I'm just saying it again. We need the bigger voice. My voice, I know, you guys are hearing me, you're saying, okay, whoever she is. You know, but really, my voice, I don't feel ever really counts. We've been bullied and bullied and bullied, the commercial fishing thing, the crab. I mean, California just got shut down because somebody saw a whale. And I love whales, we all do, we want them, we want to coexist, that's the whole idea. And so we've all complied, we complied, and this thing could just shut it down and ruin everything that we've been talking about. You know, all the stuff that I loved as a zoologist, you know, and the rest of us, like what Sunny's saying, I mean, this could really ruin this area. And I feel like I've just been finding out some of this information. Nancy Fitzpatrick, you probably know her, she's my main gal, she's about ready to retire. And she's the one that gives me information all the time about all these different programs and things. But I don't get that much information from the newspaper, on the news. We're just not getting it here, we're kind of left out. And so whatever we can do right now, I mean, I'll do everything you tell me, I'll make comments to whoever, but how is my voice really gonna count?
Will you join our rally the next one we do? We did one in Coos Bay.
I can try, but I'm also trying to work for a living.
Yeah, it's usually too.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not out on the boat, and I'm doing my other stuff too. So, I mean,
we will try to make it during the off hours, but we do need your voice. And I would like to take your
really
contact
nice.
information.
I mean, honestly, my husband's like, why did you get up there and talk? I just couldn't stand by and just let it go. And I understand all the perspective. I'm a pretty objective person, but I don't want these wind towers up there. And especially like everything else, you know, we are so regulated. We can't do this, we can't do that. And then they just want to come in and do this and then find out later if it was an impact. Yeah, it's an impact. It's just obvious from everything everybody's been saying. This is going to be an obvious impact to all sorts of stuff, not just fishing, not just this and that. It's going to impact a lot of things, and we shouldn't be pushed into it when we're not ready. And if I would have known, we could have perhaps done the resolution, and we can probably still can do a resolution. If it would help, that's what we need to do.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anne.
Willie Gergen, third generation fisherman. I currently have the fourth generation behind me. I have 2 fishing boats. My son-in-law there, my son run. I have a seafood restaurant in town also. So this is very concerning for me. Spent a lot of years on the ocean. This area here, spent my youth and young adulthood harvesting product out of here, millions of pounds of product come out of this area sustainably every year. This will crush Brookings if we lose this. This area here, we currently fish every year. This will take away all of our halibut fishing. This will take away most of the salmon fishing above Charleston. This goes from basically Bandon to Lawrence. A lot of salmon fishing, a lot of tuna fishing, let alone the deep water trawlers that fish in here. The impact is massive. But I want to talk about effort shift a little bit. These areas being closed, they're not going to let us out there. They're not going to let tugboats go through there. So what do tugboats do? Tugboats going to come into the crab grounds. What happens when tugboats come through crab grounds? They take crab pots. They wipe us out. Another thing, it's going to push fishermen into other fisheries because they can't participate in these fisheries anymore. It's called effort shift. It's happened every time we get a major change to our fishery, we get effort shift. It's changed the way we do things my entire life. So I don't want to see any compromise. I know we're probably going to have to compromise, but this is going to be catastrophic to our communities. Thanks.
Thank you, Willie.
Dennis Ward, local builder and just an all-around lover of this community in this area. Something that we learned when we had the homeless problem, that there is no voice that is not heard unless we all stand together and yell it out. And let's get that thing straight. We don't have to let things happen out there. The federal government does not have to overrun us and tell us how we're going to live our lives in any way, shape, or form. And the way that we do it is through the vote, and it's through our community and through our representatives. And when we vote somebody, when our representatives in, we're expecting you to stand up for us, not cave in later because it's behind doors, but it's to stay in the fight for us to the end. That's what we want from our representatives. We take a look at our area that we have here now. It's beautiful. What type of industry do we have here? Fishing, lumber, building, tourist. That's all we really have. You take away any one of those, and half of the, and a quarter or a part of this community and this area dies.
Yeah.
Dies. We've all seen it already since we've been here. We don't even have a bowling alley. We don't have anything for the kids to do in this area. They consider it a touristy and a retirement area. Well, all those things need infrastructure too. Kate Brown shut down the fact that you can't build anything out in Harbor because it was once a lily field. She shut it down. We can't have any expansion out there. Now, being in the trade, I've been building houses here since '92. There used to be lots. We used to have things. That's all going away. There are no more lots. There's no more expansion out in the woods, because the farther out we get into the woods, then your house burns down. Okay. Now we're talking about regulation. The fishermen have been regulated till they can't see anything but regulations. They don't have a regular fishing day. It's what are we going to do to keep up with the regulations today? And hopefully maybe make some money. Well, I think the people of this area are tired of it. We're tired of the government coming in and telling us, well, you don't really matter. Portland's been doing that to us for how long? That's why people are looking to Idaho to expand over to here, because at least maybe they'll listen to us and pay attention to the area that's sustaining Portland right now. We are the life of our state, and it starts right here at this coast, right there at that border. You want to look at what would happen if, say, in a few years, the government takes over the wind farms. Just drive up the North Bank and look what they did from the fire impact. It's a mess. That forest is useless now because they didn't get in and they didn't fix it. That's what we've got to look for the future of maintaining this huge trash pit, basically, is what it's going to turn our ocean into. On the bottom, on the top, and above, it's garbage. Everything that those wind turbines do. The reason why we're not hearing from Denmark, and you're not hearing from all these other, and believe you me, I'm from Fresno. They've been putting the wind turbines in out through Tracy and between all through there, Livermore, all those areas. Tehachapi, for 20, 30 years they've been out there. You can't tell me that when they set up these kind of things and they want to do this stuff, that we don't have the information that we need to ask the right questions. See, now already we're saying we've only got 2 days to call those guys. That's not enough time. I can't get all the information that I need. I don't even see anything on an like I stated the first. Where's the environmental impact reports? Denmark sure does have them. They're doing it just for the fact of the wind behind it. Do we have any of those? Did any of these companies or any of our government or our federal government, the Biden administration or the Trump administration or any administration, are they informing you correctly? They're not. And this whole thing is a steamroll. This whole thing is a steamroll. They're going to steamroll right over the top of us. And if we don't get together now and stand up and put our voices together, we're going to be just like every other third world country. Who's the biggest trash producer for the ocean right now? Malaysia. Who's the biggest carbon footprint? China. We can't even stand up to none of them. If everybody else isn't going to do it, and then just we do it, we're screwed. Our community's gone. I like to walk out here on the ocean, look out and not see nothing except the storm and the weather and the beautiful environment that we have. That's why I moved here. That's why I brought my family in here. And that's the way I like to keep it. We should be able to keep it pristine. I'm all for all the Green New Deal and everything. We got to get off of the other footprint of everything else that we're doing with the fossil fuels. That's understandable. But the technology's not there. And if they want to try and blind us, say, oh yeah, we can throw a wind turbine out there. All we gotta do is this, make it float, well, attached to the ocean. We got 3 gigs. But like you said, it's not coming to us. And I'm a little bit ignorant. I'm not a very well-speaking person, but I do know how I feel. And I think I feel the same way a lot of people feel. You know, I'm not an environmentalist. I'm nothing. I'm basically just a carpenter. And, you know, I mean, I've been complaining about our trade forever because it's very wasteful. What's the waste going to do? Everybody's seen a leaking trash can, right? Where's it flow? The crap comes out the bottom of it and it flows right up to your house or right up to your garage or right in your driveway, right in your parking lot, right up wherever. But that's what we're going to have out there. It's having a giant trash bin waiting for it to leach everywhere. And that's what we're going to have. And we're going to complain. We're going to go, hey, the beach is all bunged up. There's no fish. Federal government's going to go, well, too bad. And what we have to be is prepared for that. And we can, because the government does not have to walk over this community. If we stand up together and we do it right, that's my opinion. Thank you.
John Christie, Brookings. I just got a quick question for David here early. David, would you and your office be able to reach out to legislators in maybe New York and Rhode Island? There must have been legislators there that were equally opposed to the wind solution on the East Coast, and maybe find out what was successful for them or what
They weren't
what wasn't
successful.
successful.
US senators and congressmen actually opposed BOEM call areas off the East Coast, and BOEM railed on through. They were not successful.
David, that's not entirely true. In Maine, they were.
Maine, yes, Maine, they were successful in the beginning of the process with where we're at today, right?
Right now, they are putting in some test sites, but it's been driven by the state opposing what BOEM wanted to do. So I think that's a really good idea, and I can help connect you with folks back there.
Thank you. All right. Yes. Sir.
Quick question, when was BOEM created?
Heather, can you help me on this? I believe the gentleman asked when was BOEM created. So I know that BOEM was created because they were, I want to say they were involved with
yeah, so yeah, they used to be called the Marine Mineral. They were created years ago, decades ago, but they were created under a different name. They only switched to Bureau of Ocean Energy Management. I'd have to look it up, but the agency itself is part of the Department of Interior and has been around for a long time, just under a different name.
Okay.
So let me give you, we're coming down to the last 20 or so, and I just want to say hi to my Port Orford friends that are coming on down, and the fishermen from Port Orford. You know, I'm your commissioner your legislator from California border up to Charleston, over to Roseburg, and down West I-5 to Westgate Junction, rather large area. In the legislature, I'm everything energy, environment, and natural resources. Okay, with a little bit of education. Here's the reality of what's happening. I can't thank you enough for all the comments. We have a Biden administration that wants to see gigawatts of energy around the U.S. You have a state that in Oregon that passed in the 2021 legislative session. So we were successful, and if you remember, I was the lead in House and Senate Republican on cap and trade in the Oregon legislature in the 19 and 20, well, ever since I've been there, basically. And we were successful in stopping cap and trade. But in 2021, they passed what's called 100% clean. And what 100% clean does is it basically said it's the most progressive clean energy plan of any state in the nation. And that 100% clean is that we will have every electron that is coming to all of you is clean and renewable by 2040. Now, I argued in committee, the technology does not exist yet to even fulfill the last 15%. Just doesn't exist, but they don't care. It's a virtuistic passage of legislation to be in front of every other state in the nation. And they don't consider hydro renewable, which we are at the end of a very long extension cord from Bob. Now, I fought that tooth and nail. In fact, if you look at my legislation, it was even far more progressive than theirs because I was working with another Democrat that had a more reasonable proposal that would have been much better for Oregonians, would actually have put metal on the ground in Oregon and the associated jobs with it. But the fact of the matter is, it's being driven by, as you've heard the theme today here, is money, which is Portland General Electric and Pacific Power, where they were going to spend $4 billion to build renewables in Wyoming because it's cheaper and not build anything really here. And so you have now a state policy that says in 18 years, you will have every electron renewable to every home, business, industry in the state. It's not achievable, but that's what the policy says. Now, mind you, at the meantime, they're criminalizing literally natural gas as the new coal when it comes to the environmental situation in the state. And in doing so, we are literally putting ourselves in a position where you're going to have blackouts and brownouts. And I'm worried for my people because of it. Because when PG and Pacific Power can no longer fire up that coal fire or that renewable, that natural gas power plant to provide the energy during peak hours, it's going to phase out our power down here before they lose it up there, right? They're going to take it first. And it's very upsetting to me. That's why I fight tooth and nail about these crazy virtuistic ideas rather than the realities of the situation. Because when you have everyone trying to push you to a electric vehicle and you look at a cul-de-sac, if anybody has relatives in Portland, I have a brother in Portland, Hillsborough. And let's say you have 100 homes in that cul-de-sac, right? Well, my brother has natural gas heat, natural gas furnace, and natural gas stove. So imagine if everyone, especially with the ice storms that we've been having and so forth, but imagine if everybody comes home or more importantly, wakes up in the morning, they turn on their coffee pot, and then they turn on their heat that's now electric, all of them. They turn on their hot water heater that's now electric, all of them. There's no way, there's no, and they have their electric car plugged in, or when they come home from work. The grid, the transmission infrastructure does not exist to power what is necessary to fulfill all of that. And so I say these things because when it comes to the politics of what we're talking about here, and when it comes to the politics of me going to the state, now I'm going to get a letter, I'm going to draft a letter from the Coastal Caucus as the former chair of the Coastal Caucus, that is going to be a powerful letter to ODO, to the department, to BOEM, to our governor, and to our state agencies. And if I have to, as I did pass and draft resolution and pass resolutions that stop any oil and gas exploration from the Trump administration off our coast, by saying, fine, you can build it in federal waters, but you can't transport it across state waters nor on state lands. I can do that too, but when it comes to our issues out here, because what you don't see in that map is below where it stops at the California border, that call area in California continues to go. And so what I'm very concerned about is the fact that you're going to have a situation where it isn't gonna come on land here in Curry County, but it's gonna go down to California. So we are going to have to deal with what's in federal waters off the coast of my district, off the coast of our communities, without any benefit whatsoever.
David? Thank you.
Yeah. Why not?
15 minutes left.
Thanks. So, in closing, I thought, well, so in closing, these are the political realities are, we have a supermajority, we have a Democrat supermajority in the state legislature. If I try to pass a bill like, and add language to that says, and that includes offshore wind energy, because of all of these things that we've talked about here, do you think that I'm gonna get the Democrats in the state to support a piece of legislation like that? So these are the realities that we're faced here. And so I want to be very clear with you all. I'll fight like hell for you, as I always do. But it takes every single one of you, and that's why I'm here, to help me do it. Because I can't do it by myself. I can't do it with just Heather and Elena and the others either. It takes us all to do this as a voice together.
We have a couple more, thank you. And I say we will take you up on that. We have a couple more people online. We have just 15 minutes left for this room, and I want to be respectful of the person who is still here, Stacy. I know she's not here, but Stacy, thank you. Do we have anyone in the room here who would like to make a statement? Please, David.
Okay, thank you. Hello, everybody. I'm another David. Seems to be a few of us here today. I want to thank Elena for putting this together, David Brock-Smith. A lot of you in the audience tonight that were at our fishing club meeting last night. Steve Gogan, he might even be in that little computer somewhere. He made it home safely. He came down on our request to 2 people there, and I have comments from all 72 I'd like to read, but I won't because we're taking. Gotcha. Boy, I got that look. But anyway, there's no question. It's risk. This whole operation is just, there's a lot of risk, and I don't see the gain, and that's loud and clear in all the comments that are on these cards. Bohm, I know, I kind of feel like what David Brock-Smith said about the abandoned area. Oh, there was three call areas once upon a time, and then mysteriously abandoned's gone. And in my mind, I actually said, well, there's one ploy by Bohm. Okay, all right, we're going to take that one away. And if you think about the call areas that are, sorry about that, the call areas that are here, they're on these maps. I mean, you realize those are large areas, but what Bohm is going to do, they'll narrow it down, become wind energy areas. And then from there, they're going to lease areas so that, oh yeah, well, we don't have those big areas anymore. We just have these little sections over here and here, which are still thousands of, windmills are going to be out there. So I don't trust Bohm. I don't know about you, but I kind of heard that a little bit today. It's like, I keep reflecting on the Wizard of Oz. I don't know, famous thing, but I think we've got to find a way to pull that curtain away. Because the Wizard of Oz is all being and all omnipotent, but then when Toto the dog, was it Toto? Because it pulls the curtain away, oh, it's exposed. So, I mean, we got to do it. We got to find a way to stop. But in the meantime, let's at least find a way to push the pause button. And whatever we have to do, we have 2 days, like you said.
You have the Bohm comment period is until June 28th.
Right.
The state's comments period is, and I'm incorporating all of your comments.
Perfect.
Here into a letter from the coastal Caucus.
Excellent. Well, thank you. I won't take any more time. Thank you for all for coming, and let's get this job done as we can.
Can I ask one more thing? So when you form this letter, is there a way for all of us to put our names and attach it to it?
Well, I'll give you a copy of the letter from the this letter is going to be from the Oregon Legislative Coastal Caucus.
Okay.
And it's then going to everyone, as I mentioned before. It's going to go to Oregon Department of Energy, Bohm, as well as the governor, our federal delegation, and others. So and the reason why it was difficult for me to So we're in a blackout period for newsletters prior to the election for a couple months. So as I might see, you might get my newsletters every once in a while. I wasn't able to send out newsletters because we're in a blackout period.
David.
And we don't even have offshore wind yet. Real quick, before we move on, I would like to address your question. We are, with my colleagues, discussing a potential petition. Yes. So something like that, then yes, I think we can get the entire community engaged on that.
Just Oregon Department of Energy, why can't we push them for extending the comment period?
Yeah. Well, because
Maybe you can get that done, it's you.
Well, so the comment period, I mean, it's over the weekend. We're gonna submit the letter from the Coastal Caucus on Monday. I mean, they were not hard fast on the 27th, but they have to get all of the comments in and digest it so they can start the report, because the report must be submitted to the legislature prior to September 15th. And I would like it submitted as soon as possible, because then it can go into the record for BOEM, which wants to then make the decision on the call areas, on the lease areas this fall, right? And so I have a commitment from Whitney that and BOEM, that the lease areas will not be identified until after they digest the report from the state.
Okay. However, to follow up on your question, I think it's a very good question. If the community is saying that they were not aware, the Department of Energy was not made people aware, so why can't you request Department of Energy extend the public comment, push the September deadline forward? And it doesn't really matter what BOEM, this is the state. So I think there is a fair point.
Yes. I'm happy to ask the Department of Energy if they would push the comment period back to where it can receive more comments from the public.
They need to do a little better job reaching out to the communities also.
Yeah,
I think so far, this is the first meeting, that's my observation, we've had on the coast where it was not dominated by the fishing industry. So this is a nice, we have a mixture of sectors, but we also have community members and in a nice proportion. So I wonder if that was the ratio of participation in other locations, Newport, Astoria, Coos Bay, we might have been getting the same feedback from those folks. I don't know.
Newport had a good mix of.
But I think it's worthwhile in looking
like us
into.
here and Astoria had a good mix, but only a fraction of what I said I would.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it. And I'll follow up with you on that. So we have 7 more minutes. And I really want to give a chance for a few more folks to speak online. We're on a short timeline, and I will not get to wrap up this meeting with a lengthy 15-minute spiel, which I'm sure everyone is really enjoying. It's a joke because I've been on a good track record of taking over places. Okay, Heather, who do we have online?
Yeah, I wanted to just make a couple comments. I want to really thank everybody that participated and spoke tonight. It was great to have different perspectives than we've had in some of the other meetings, and I really appreciate them. I do want to say that we have recorded all of these sessions, and I was contemplating transcribing them and submitting them to ODO, Oregon Department of Energy, by the date. And after hearing the concerns from people here about not having known about the opportunity, I'm committing to do that. So I will get these meetings transcribed and submitted on time so that your voice, at least what you said today, can be heard, because I think it's really important. Look, I can't even get a meeting with the governor. I've been trying. I've reached out to my representatives who are Democratic to get a meeting with Kate Brown. They've said they can't even get meetings with her. So that to me is a little disturbing as a constituent. I feel like we should be able to speak directly with her. Some of the things that have come out in the public comments so far to ODO are things like, well, look, hey, fishermen, you lose your job. you could get a job ferrying people and supplies between the shore and out to the wind farms. Aside from being deeply offensive, that is just a pure, like, uneducated, it just, what you guys are all saying tonight is so important. And people talked about place, they talked about heritage, about generational fishing, about a beautiful place. I mean, all these things are just ignored with that kind of comment. Hey, you can ferry some people in and out. Great job. Not, you know, taking away a third generation fisherman's livelihood into the future. I mean, that is just outrageous. I wholeheartedly reject that this is a done deal. And I hope that David Brock Smith and everybody else has the courage to stand up and say, no, we need to do this the Oregon way, not this way. You guys have reinvigorated my passion, which was already there before. And I think I heard Richard keep talking about me before the session started, saying I was no nonsense. And that's true. We can't let them do this to us. We can't. And you guys can all be a part of that solution. So we have one more public comment. It's Michael Koneski. I'm going to let him join in, but I wanted people to know that we will transcribe these. Even if I'm doing it, we will get it done and we will get it submitted. And we will make sure you have copies of it. And I don't know, Yelena, if you did a sign-in list.
Oh, I did. And I think everyone signed in.
Great, great. Then we will communicate with people and reach out to them. I mean, I was already Googling Brookings Automotive, trying to find James's email so I could connect with him. I've sent you an email, so you will get that when you get out to the car where your phone is. I want to continue this conversation, and I do really appreciate what everybody said tonight. So let's give Michael Koneski a couple of minutes before 7, and then we'll sign off from online. But thank you so much to everybody that's provided comments. It's been really, really helpful for me and really interesting. Thank you. Mike, go ahead.
Thank you.
2 minutes, Mike, 2 minutes.
Thank you,
Thank
Heather.
you. Thank you, Heather, and thank you, Elena, and everybody that's participated. Briefly, I'm just going to run through these real quick. You should really check out the job scene. The only place I've heard of, and the one that seems to be the favorite right now for assembly of these turbines, because they take them out upright. You need 33 feet minimum to get them of draft, and then they push them down lower than that after they get out to sea, but like to 60 feet. But the jobs will probably right now, it looks like for assembly will go most likely to Puget Sound. There's even been talk about using South Korea to bring them over upright, if you can believe that. Service, maybe 1 or 2 ports might get that, but I suspect that they're not going to divvy it out amongst every port on the coast. So there's a lot of misinformation or no information, I guess, on the job side. Getting a call area canceled. There is no known way to do that BOEM has ever explained to us. It's if they get some political back pressure somewhere, I think then they will talk about reduction, but I only know of a couple of cases that's happened at all. The one in the abandoned area was a little bit of a surprise, but not really when you consider the area that they encapsulated there to begin with. There's a project of the EAs, environmental assessments, which is a weak form of EIS. The ones we've seen, which are 2, one for Humboldt, one for Morro Bay, have been just, they wouldn't pass the smell test anywhere else. And they misrepresented a lot of what the fishermen said. So all this stuff is just more icing on the cake, I guess, but it took me quite a while to realize that we're not playing with NOAA fishery rules anymore and not using a public process anymore, and that they just do pretty much what they please. Most of what they have is guidelines, not rules they abide by. So we can use all the help we can get, and Lori Steele, Susan Chambers, Heather, Elena, Scott have all been instrumental in keeping this process moving forward. So thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Heather. All right, we've got 2 more, and thank you for leaving me with perfect 2 minutes. You only took 2. Mike and I, we are known to be competing for microphone space, I guess. So the follow-up, the next steps, as Heather stated, the meetings will be transcribed. We have 1 more to go tomorrow. It can be, is it virtually available or it was on the radio? You can listen to it at least, right? We thank you for signing in. We have now your contact information, just kidding. But we will follow up with you and those who do not want to receive anything in respect to the offshore wind, because I've been contemplating to start a newsletter, and so keep it narrow to that focus, industry and the residents. So thank you. And if you will not like that idea, you will just let us know to take you off the list. Please do consider commenting to BOEM. It's very important, voicing your concerns. And I'm here, I'm in Brookings. Please reach out. Again, my name is Yelena Novak, Oregon Trout Commission. Please reach out. I will be reaching out to the commission, Port Commission, and our county commissioners. I will be following up with everyone. And I'm really excited to have these discussions, especially with you guys being here. And just stay engaged and ask if you have anyone in a Curry pilot. I called them today and seeing if they have anyone available to attend. Well, my understanding they don't have anyone here in the area, period. But I asked them why there's no coverage in the media. Are you guys aware of what's happening? And I got a very interesting response. Well, it was constructive. He made a suggestion for path forward for me. And he said that they will look at what you got and maybe something will end. Anyway, there's lots of maybes and not enough information. Portland media is completely just disengaged on these. And
Yelena,
yes,
mention the BOEM meetings on the 15th and 16th.
thank you. There's a lot going on. So we will have, that would be June 15th, 16th, 17th, end of the week. We will actually have BOEM on the coast. And it's fishing related, but also community related. They will be specifically here to take the public comment on record.
Here.
We will be here, Heather, off the top of my head, I don't remember. Brookings is the last day, 17th.
Yeah, it'll be Newport, Coos Bay, and then Brookings, 3 days is my understanding.
Yes, we will have them here, and it will be word to word. They will have a court scriber taking the comments, uploading them to the Federal Register. So that's your other opportunity. And we will need to find a way to blast it as hard as possible and get our media on board to notify.
On Curry Report, if the pilot won't show up for that.
Perfect. And I will, and thank you.
So do we have a location for that?
I hope it'll be a much bigger room than this, because
Oh, I am trying to
I
get.
know there'd be hundreds of people.
Good.
I thought that'd be a lot.
I'm looking at Elks Lodge and hopefully, well, they are. So we are helping, we are facilitating, a couple of us in the industry, and really welcome everyone to join that as well and be as prepared as possible to provide the comments on record, like court style. Because that's the only way. We have to get on record, regardless of whether or not they will even look at them. We have to get on record.
Well, and these are something that we've convinced them to do. It's not something they were interested in doing, but Mike Okaneski's been working on this for over a year. Yelena has been really instrumental in getting them set up. So everybody should take advantage of it because they wouldn't be doing it. They don't want to do it. They've already checked their box on we got our public comment. So I would encourage everybody to participate that can.
Another success is Normally Bowen has a 45-day comment period. They extended it to 60 days for us.
But regardless of whether or not what they have to do, don't have to do, we just gotta, like the gentleman that was speaking here, it's our right. We have to speak up, and we either take it and allow them to steamroll us, or we will still go down, but at least we will go down with a heck of a lot of noise. And sooner or later, the communities, the small communities will start waking up. And hopefully by then we will figure out the way to help Portlanders open their eyes and the other metro areas, because they do care about the whales as well. So there's a lot of commonality, common ground, lots of misinformation, and we gotta find a way to bridge the gaps. And this is the start. This is why we're here. So thank you, everyone. All right, guys online, you are the rock stars. Thank you.
Thanks, Elena. I'm gonna stop the recording now.
Thank you.
Thanks, Elena.
Thanks, Elena.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Scott, Heather.